Puns and Machine Guns, the podcast where we watch and discuss every Arnold Schwarzenegger movie one at a time, and maybe the occasional surprise as well. I'm Kevin Keene.
I'm Mike Olson, and today we'll be doing Last Action Hero, released by Columbia Pictures on June 18th, 1993, starring, not surprisingly, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Austin O'Brien, Charles Dance, Tom Noonan, Anthony Quinn, F. Murray Abraham, Professor Teru Tanaka, and Art Carney in his final performance. It was written by Shane Black and David Arnott from a story by Zach Penn, and it was directed by John McTiernan.
Released June 18th, 1 week after Jurassic Park.
Yes, and that certainly is interesting with what's going on somewhat today in terms of Jurassic World, reestablishing the Jurassic franchise, but also it's interesting for me that I think that some of the lack of success for Last Action Hero, and you and I both think it's an undiscovered and unappreciated action movie. I think a lot of its perceived flop is more on the business side than the movie itself, and we'll probably get into that. And I'm sure that Jurassic Park played a large part in that fact.
It explains a lot for sure. Did Jurassic World and Terminator Genesis come out around the same time?
Ironically enough, they did. Jurassic World had already been out for a few weeks. It wasn't one, but yeah.
It only just occurred to me.
Yes. That's somewhere in my notes here, but it's somewhat ironic, although I wouldn't say that Terminator Genesis, while it was a lot of fun, and we'll eventually get to it, I would not say that it's going to be an undiscovered gem and will look better over time. So the parallel may not be perfect, but there certainly is in terms of Universal Pictures and Arnold release dates. They seem to coincide pretty well.
Speaking of unappreciated gems, I want to, apology is maybe too strong a word, but I need to say, if you listen to the last episode, I was being a little ambivalent, and I was even poking fun at you a little bit for kind of overplaying a little, so you were kind of playing it up, and I was wrong. This movie is awesome. I think what happened the last time I watched it, it was 4 or 5 months ago. I went when I first bought the Blu-ray. And I was watching it. I was working from home, and I was just watching it just to have something on in the background. And so because I was working, I would only poke my head up when
something interesting.
One of the parts I would I got to watch this part. I got to watch, Leo the Fart's funeral. And so I think the last episode I said something like the real world parts are the weakest parts. And you know what? I actually, this time watching it, and this is the first time I really gave it my full attention in a couple of years, and those parts are fine. This is a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, I still agree that they are the weakest parts, but with one particular exception, which is towards the beginning of the movie, which the real-world scenes in the first 5 to 10 minutes completely make it worthwhile. Yeah, there were some parts that I don't love and are the weakest parts, but it doesn't drain or take away from, I guess, the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it has its lulls, it has its problems. There are a few things, I think, in certain spots, Last Action Hero doesn't know what kind of a movie it wants to be.
Yep.
But overall, this is a very underappreciated movie. It has a reputation that it doesn't deserve as being a dud. It was a flop, but it's not a dud. It's a good movie.
Yeah, and even within that, if you go and look in, what it grossed, both domestically, although back in 1993, the foreign box office didn't matter nearly as much as it does today. But in terms of its success, it was just on a relative scale compared to what Jurassic Park was doing, to the expectations and the hype. It's a movie that, if it were released today, a lot of things would have to be changed because there's a lot of things in the movie that existed in 1993 that are kind of laughable today. But what I think is that the business side and the expectations with all of the marketing and all of the hype, people expected this to be, the largest blockbuster of all time, setting records, and it grossed and did fairly well. But based upon the hype and the expectations is what it underperformed. And then it's sort of something that builds upon itself, right? You've got a beloved start of a franchise in Jurassic Park that's come out just before. This is, quote-unquote, a dud compared to the expectations, and then it just kind of fades into oblivion. And it was just a perfect storm for the business side and we'll call it the Hollywood side to impact people's opinions, and I won't say that this is the first time that the business side ever impacted people's opinions of a movie, because I'm sure many times before it had. But this is certainly one kind of in my formative years of watching movies that I can distinctly remember. I remember not really wanting to see this movie in theaters because everybody was talking about, it's not good, but nobody could actually tell me that had seen the movie that it wasn't good. It was just the idea or the hype it hadn't lived up to.
Speaking of hype, This was in my IMDb trivia to come later, but this was the first, apparently, according to IMDb. I mean, consider the source, but apparently this was the first movie to be advertised in space.
I saw that as well, and that just is astonishing to me.
Yeah.
What the point of it was, other than for we've done this.
Yeah, it's just to get the Moon Man market.
Yes, apparently so.
Anyway, so let's get into the movie. It's Last Action Hero, again, like you said, directed by John McTiernan.
Yes.
He's following up, he did Die Hard, and then what did he do between? I knew this before, and now I forgot, but he did something in between that was kind of a failure. And then this kind of cemented the death of his career, is the failure of Last Action Hero.
Yes, well, up until that time, that's what I think is somewhat interesting, too, before we specifically get into the movie. But you had Shane Black, kind of and still an action writer that I really like, and I think you really do, on some of, his even more recent stuff, Iron
absolutely.
Man 3, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So in terms of the hype or excitement, if this was a movie that was coming out, today, and you had the writing equivalent, action equivalent of maybe the biggest action writer, making the edits. I know it's a story by Zach Penn, who I think has complained, or I read had complained that it completely took upon something that he didn't intend. Yeah. But you then add in, at the time, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, action director with, not that far from Die Hard and some other successes, and at the time, the biggest action star in all of Hollywood. It's like a dream team. And so, obviously times have changed and maybe tastes have changed, but if you put yourself back in 1993, this is as good of a combination as you're going to get, from writing to directing to acting, and I say that somewhat loosely, particularly where this one is almost Arnold trying not to be Arnold, but then in other scenes trying to be Arnold, which is kind of funny in itself.
No, I think he gives a good performance in this.
Yeah.
You and I think, agree that he's an underrated actor in general. But yeah, this is not like a great performance or anything. But he's doing his job.
Yes.
So anyway, back to John McTiernan. I forgot Hunt for Red October, which was after Die Hard. But then after that he made Flight of the Intruder, which was a failure, and then Medicine Man, which is the one I was thinking of.
Yes.
And then this. So yeah, that's a rough stretch for him after a bunch of big hits, Predator, and then Die Hard, and then Hunt for October.
Right.
The guy's flying high, and then, boy, after that, his career really fell apart.
Yeah, but in particular, those three, you tick off three of those, and those are three of the biggest of, the mid 80s all the way up until Red October's probably 1990, so late 80s, early 90s. I mean, that's a pretty good run. And then two kind of shaky ones, and then this one, which you and I think is underappreciated, but at that point you have cemented yourself that your career is on the wrong side.
Regardless of what we think of, regardless of what we think of Last Action Hero, it's not going to help your career if you directed it.
No, no,
that's for sure. Okay, so the movie starts weirdly with no. Not only does it not have any opening credits, it has no opening title. It doesn't even have the Columbia logo. It just starts.
It does. And I got that was one of the most interesting things, is not only does it just start, but it starts with an ending. I mean, I think it's somewhat genius. I mean, we'll get there, but you have no credits. It's a cold open in a movie within a movie, but it's great that it's effectively the end of the movie.
Yeah, which we don't know at the time. When we're first watching, you don't know it's the ending of it. And I guess that's why they did it that way, is because they didn't want... I guess it would have been weird to have like the Columbia logo and then here's an ending of some other movie.
Right.
But yeah, I mean it makes sense, but it's still strange, like the fact that they got away with that. Like the Columbia just let them just start the movie. We don't need our logo. That would never happen today.
We don't need the credit, which is interesting too, because I subsequently I've read in sort of the quote unquote business of Hollywood. It was a pretty big deal. I remember when I'm pretty sure it's the first Matrix came out, and they wanted to change the Warner Brothers logo and have it kind of in the green, scheme of the Matrix. That was a big deal. Warner Brothers didn't want to do that. Eventually, the creative convinced them to do it. But I find it interesting. That was 1999, but 6 years earlier, you open a movie and you've given no credit to not only just any of the actors yet, but more importantly, the company that financed, and as we've discussed, financed a lot of money for the making of, as well as the advertising budget, and you don't know it until you get, I didn't time it, but it's got to be probably at least between 5 and 10 minutes of screen time before you eventually get to any opening credits, if you will.
Yeah, but they're not even the opening credits to this movie. They're opening credits to a different movie.
Yes.
A fictional movie.
Yes.
But yeah, you do get the Columbia logo there at least.
Yes.
So that's probably what the negotiation was. It's just like, look, it's in the movie. It's
just
much
5
later.
or 10 minutes later. And
it's more than 5 or 10 minutes. I think it's
okay.
like 20 or something. So yeah, and also it starts with a weird like skewed frame. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I guess to indicate we're watching a movie inside a movie, but it's really weird the way that starts. It's just like a skew, and then it goes whoom and like hits you in the face.
Yep.
So we're outside an elementary school. There's like a million cops. There's a helicopter flying around, and then the first line of dialogue, just to let you know that it's a Shane Black written script, is the chief of police saying, "Is one hell of a way to spend Christmas."
Yes,
because Shane Black can't help himself.
And so what's also interesting is it's an elementary school, but it's I don't know if high rise, especially here since we're in Chicago. It's not a high rise, but it's a mid rise. I mean, it's a tall building, right? It's not a 2-story building. It's an office building. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. And the thing I noticed this time is it looks like, because I think in certain big cities, like I think probably in New York and really like maybe it's also true in Chicago, but they have like 4 or 5-story elementary schools.
Yeah, like I know the Latin schools in Chicago, they have multiple buildings, but they are, multiple stories.
But Jack Slater's an L.A. cop, isn't he?
Yes.
So is that supposed to be L.A.? Is that supposed to be New York? L.A. I don't think would have a school like that.
It certainly seems out of place, but then again, the scene wouldn't work if it wasn't on a tall building. So that's where they decided to go.
That's true, because the villain, the unseen villain, has to throw a cop's body off the roof, which is our first body count. So there you go. I've got my little ding.
I'm glad you have it, and I'm glad you've invested the time, as you said you would, in counting that and the bad puns, which is probably the most important on this podcast.
Yes, there are much fewer puns. There are a lot of... You wouldn't think, because this was designed to be more kid-friendly, and you wouldn't think there would be that high of a body count. It's pretty high. I was kind of surprised. I was going through like, wow, it's in the dozens.
It doesn't surprise me, and I'll be interested to know what the count is on the bad puns. No matter what the count is, it has maybe one of the greatest ones that Arnold's had of all time. I'll be very excited to get to that one.
They're pretty good. Well, let's get to the first one right now, because Arnold shows up and has one of the best introductions for any character. I mean, I love this introduction.
Yeah, the opening to this movie is absolutely fantastic. And again, the fact that it's an ending, maybe that's the reason it's so great, because it's an ending to a movie, which is a great, would be a solid ending.
But if you think about it, it doesn't make sense, because this is the ending to Jack Slater 3 we're seeing. Why is he getting this big introduction? Like, is this a reintroduction?
That is very interesting. He should, at this point, if it's the end of the movie, he should be very well established.
Right. This is clearly his first shot in the movie. But in Jack Slater 3... this is the end of the movie.
Right, he should have been in there for like 2 hours.
This shot makes no sense if you think... I want to do a lot of speculation about the Jack Slater series in this podcast. Because
And by the way, I'm one who is advocate, if anyone in Hollywood happens to listen to this, if you really want to reboot or make something, I'm willing to buy tickets to the Jack Slater movies. So please, if you're looking to write and... Go find in the archives something to make the Jack Slater movies. Yeah. I, for one, will be signing up to go see them.
That part made it into episode 0, so now this is your second plea.
Yes, can you see how much I desperately want the Slater movie?
You should just do that in every episode, regardless of...
It doesn't matter the movie.
We're talking about twins. Please make the last section here.
Please make Jack Slater 1.
Or Jack Slater.
Or the very first Jack Slater.
So let's play this clip of his introduction and just kind of describe it, and then we'll go through the pun. We'll go all the way up to the pun. Because he's walking over... police cars.
On top of him.
Yeah, on top of him, stepping over the lights with his snake boots. The best part is his boots get it close up first, and then his belt, and then his face. And he's already smoking a cigar.
Absolutely.
And I love this score by Michael Caine, especially this time watching it, because we're using some of his music for the introduction to this podcast. So Michael Caine's score is really good.
God damn it, Jack, I'm talking to you. The last time you pulled this John Jittybug popcorn antique ass shit, people lost body parts.
Now, I wonder what that story is. Was that the previous movie? Someone lost body parts?
Or is it earlier in the movie?
Right, exactly. Oh, there's Tina Turner as the mayor.
This is the lieutenant governor.
Later, here's what I...
When the governor gets you, call me.
People love to read into that. Okay, here comes... Watch, the score stops for this point. The score, it gets out of its way.
Hey, you want to be a farmer? Here's a couple of acres.
And he kicks him in the nuts. He catches his walkie-talkie.
Next one, our girl.
It is absolutely fantastic. Not just the pun, but the fact that the kick launches the SWAT guy up into the air.
And then he just casually catches the walkie-talkie.
Yes.
Next one, I'll hurt.
And as you said, people read into it. I do have it in my notes. I do think it is fantastic just to have the line. And again, this is 1993, but to have the line in this movie, when the governor gets here, call me. If you had written that, there's no way anybody would believe, if this didn't exist if it was in the old days and you didn't have a recordable format and you couldn't go and pull up, the old archives, nobody would believe that he said that in a movie. It's just...
it's just a coincidence. A cop would probably, to a certain extent, a cop does report all the way up to the governor in one sense or another. It
is true, but it just seems so perfect to me that they wrote into the script in 1993 that the mayor, Tina Turner, has the lieutenant governor there, okay? But she couldn't get all the way up to the governor. It's just perfect that it isn't, some other bureaucrat, but he winds up being able to have the line of when the governor gets here, call me.
And I like the implication that she brought the lieutenant governor in here just to stop Jack Slater.
Jack Slater, exactly.
There's a crisis happening, but no, it's like, you need to stop Jack Slater. Never mind the killer on the roof.
Yes, that you have countless numbers of police cars that outnumber those that are out there for Die Hard, right?
Yeah.
You've got a crisis with an elementary school, no less, but you need to stop Jack Slater.
That's the part of this movie that maybe doesn't work, is you go from that scene, which is really silly, and in a fun way, I love that introduction, up to a scene on the roof, which is a little too real and too dark, especially because later in the movie we find out how that situation plays out. We don't see it here because the movie goes out of focus, but later in the movie we see that this movie apparently ends with Jack Slater's son being just killed.
Right.
And that's the end of the movie?
It's a very, serious, and when you really think about it, like today, I'm sure all of this stuff would be rewritten. I mean, kind of a kidnapping hostage situation in elementary school hits way too close to home of things that have happened in real.
Well, there's that for sure. Yeah,
but but to your point is that yes, this is kind of this opening scene is parody, kind of fun, and then it gets kind of somber fast. You don't know it yet, but in reality, it's the ending to Jack Slater 3 is a pretty down ending. Actually, when you think about it for an action movie, it's a really down ending.
Yeah.
I mean, if that really is the last frame of the movie.
And again, it's stuff like this where, as a parody or as a satire of action movies, it's missing the mark. Because what action movie ends that way? The only thing I could even remotely think of is Bond on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Not to spoil the ending of that, but it has a very down ending.
Yes.
But that's not the kind of movie that this is supposedly satirizing.
Supposed to be. No, the Lethal Weapons don't end that way, right? Die Hard doesn't end that way.
Yeah, so it's a strange decision to be like... And, they kind of negotiate around it by you don't see it for a while, and you don't... But when you really put the pieces together, it's like, what a weird... Jack Slater 3 is a strange movie.
Yeah, no.
In a lot of ways. It's clear.
But obviously it must have been successful enough in this fake world and popular enough that it spawned Jack Slater 4.
Well, I want to speculate. I get the impression, or at least I'm going to speculate, that Jack Slater 4 is the kid-friendly,
last action hero, if you will.
Right, exactly. Because I think, if I had to guess, Jack Slater 1 through 3 were all really gritty, dark, cop movies, but they got progressively more crazy. I mean, basically, the progression of the Lethal Weapon series from a kind of a dark and gritty series to a cartoon.
Yep.
And I get the impression that that's what they're trying to portray here is, Jack Slater 4 is the silly one. They just stopped, especially when you consider this movie ends with his son being killed, and then we'll get to, I'll save it until we get there, but the way Jack Slater 4 begins is very incongruous with the way this ends.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so he goes up on the roof, he confronts the Ripper.
Played by Tom Noonan.
Tom Noonan, who's playing a similar role. Have you ever seen Manhunter?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, he's
Absolutely.
playing a similar role of the Manhunter. Where he's kind of obviously a much more comic booky version of that character. But I now that I'm a little older and I've seen Manhunter, I understand when later in the movie when his agent shows up, it's like, you want to play serial killers your whole career? It's like,
yes.
Oh, I get that joke now because I've seen Manhunter.
Yeah, and Tom Noonan's been in a few other things I've seen over the years. He was had a recurring role in Hell on Wheels for a while. Probably an underrated, actor. Certainly a guy sort of like Steve Buscemi, who's not getting by on his looks necessarily, but a talented guy, and doesn't have a ton of screen time in this. But what he does have is good enough, I guess.
He has more than you'd expect because you kind of think he's just here for the beginning, and it's kind of a surprise when he shows up later. So Jack goes up to the roof, and Ripper's got his son plus a bunch of other kids hostage.
Yes.
So there's a pretty cool shot where he throws the axe. That's a cool shot.
It is. The Ripper. So if you're not watching the movie and you're just going to have us explain it for you, the Ripper, his
I assume
his hook, no pun intended. He kind of dressed like the Gorton's fisherman with a yellow raincoat, or the "I Know What You Did Last Summer" killer. At least from the first one, I don't know any beyond that movie. And he wields a really sharp axe. So that's kind of what the Ripper's MO is. And you get a little dialogue about that the Ripper should have gotten the death penalty, but Jack's illegal search made the bloody axe inadmissible.
Yeah, completely unnecessary backstory.
Yes.
Why do we need this backstory?
And what's really interesting about it is that you'd think that the viewer of... I'm assuming he's only in Jack Slater 3, but maybe the Ripper was in other Jack Slater movies. We don't know because we never see any of the other ones. But you'd think that the audience who's watching Jack Slater 3, they already know who the Ripper is, and you get
right.
all of this background in this. Granted, I understand why you're getting it, is you get a little bit because you, as the viewer of Last Action Hero, haven't seen the Jack Slater movies. But it is interesting how much exposition and background on the Ripper you get there in that scene.
But we, as the viewers of Last Action Hero, don't need that exposition.
It's true.
Why is that there? It doesn't. There's absolutely no reason. The fact that the Ripper was released because of an illegal search or whatever, there's no need for that.
Right, because really at the point, the only thing that matters now is he's got hostages, including his son, and he has an axe. So
right.
Whatever the history is, I guess you're right, it is irrelevant. Yes, I guess maybe he has something personally against Jack, and that's the reason why he's targeted his son.
I mean, I guess they were worried that first-time viewers of Last Action Hero wouldn't understand this is a movie in a movie, because you don't really know that yet.
No.
So maybe that's why that's there. It's just so they were worried audiences are going to be like, "Who's this? What's happening?"
Could be.
So
either way, I mean, it's not like it slows down the movie or it's terrible or anything, but it is somewhat interesting that you get that much background.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, the villains in Jack Slater 4, which is the movie that Last Action Hero takes place in, you really don't get that much, which is somewhat interesting. Now, granted, you're not that far into the movie when Last Action Hero, the movie, kind of gets spliced in. But you really don't get much on the Tortelli mob. You don't get much on Benedict. They're just kind of villains, right?
True,
so
yeah.
it is kind of interesting. You know more about the Ripper than you do the villains that are in the actual movie that's going on in Last Action Hero.
If anything, it should be the reverse. We need to know more about Benedict, especially.
I actually would like to.
Yeah.
I find him very interesting.
And we know nothing about him.
No.
So, especially because he's a British hitman for an Italian mob.
Yes.
How did that happen?
It's extremely confusing.
Yeah, that's an interesting story in and of itself. So then the movie goes out of focus.
Yes.
And we're introduced to Danny Madigan already whining.
Yep.
Going, focus!
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, let's talk about this kid. Let's get into Danny Madigan. This character, I don't want to criticize the actor because he's a kid actor.
Yep.
And I actually did some research into what else. We can get into that now if you want, but this is just a bad character, and it's kind of a shame because he's basically the protagonist of the movie. Everything we're getting is through his experience, and I really hate this kid.
Yeah,
I really do not like Danny Madigan, and it's the thing of this movie that is its biggest failure is that kid is just so unlikable, and he needs to be the. I mean, I don't know if you agree, but you're looking at me like
no. Well, what I was going to add to it is that he's really the proxy for the audience, right? I mean, he
needs to be.
Yeah, he needs to be, and so you have to make it truly great, which I don't think either one of us would say it's a great movie, but it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
To make it truly great, that whether it's the actor or the writing for that character, you really need to have that spot on. And I will say, I think at times like his stuff works, but for the most part, I would say you're right. It doesn't work, and I don't know if it's the actor or if it's the material that's given.
I don't want to put the blame on the actor because I think the indication that the filmmakers I don't think knew what to do with this character, and I think the proof of that is Danny's gross hands. You notice his gross hands? He's got like scabs and stuff all over. We can find a clip and I'll show you.
No, I actually did not notice that.
Literally, like he's just covered in like scabs, as if, I guess, to indicate he's just like a rough and tumble kid. But that doesn't match at all what the performance we're getting.
No, that's interesting. If that's the case, I didn't notice that because if that is the intention, you don't get that at all from.
Yeah. Let me find, because I think it's most noticeable in the clip where he's being robbed. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but and I just don't know if they didn't understand what kind of a character this was going to be or what. But like that tells me that it's not the kid's fault. It's not the actor's fault. It's
the construct of the writers.
And the filmmaker just not having a real good idea of what kind of a character this is. Okay, wait, here's...
Yeah,
there's,
no, I never really noticed that. Yeah, no,
And that's production design or makeup, I guess. It's not...
You don't think he got that in the whatever stunts he had to do on set,
no.
right?
Well, if they didn't want that makeup, they would have covered it up with makeup. So, like, that's clearly intentional.
Yeah, and it's at no point in time in any of his scenes do you get, much like we just said how you get so much on the Ripper, you don't really get all that much on Danny for as big of a character as he is. But more importantly, if that's something you're trying to convey outside of something other than makeup, you've at no point given any indication. What I got from it was he misses a lot of school, but it's because he's out at the movies, right? Because he loves the movies, not because he's out causing trouble or is trying to reenact the Warriors or something like that.
Right,
I mean, that's if he is that kid, you do not get that at all.
Yeah, I paused it at 13:39 for you listening at home. By the way, you should have watched the movie before listening to this because we don't need to describe the plot. If you haven't watched the movie, stop this and watch the movie and then come back. But yeah, 13:39, the robbers got him like pinned against the wall and like look at that, it's gross.
Yes,
it's disgusting. Anyway. Austin O'Brien is the actor who played Danny. And I looked him up. I assumed this was his first movie. Turns out he was in The Lawnmower Man, which I've never seen The Lawnmower Man.
Neither have I. I know it was somewhat successful, but I haven't seen it and don't know it. And I didn't know he was in it either.
But he said that predates this. So I looked him up. I was kind of curious to see if he kept acting. And he did for a while. And now he's a wedding photographer in Chicago.
Interesting.
So he's in the neighborhood.
He's in the neighborhood. Perhaps he won't take too kindly if he happens to discover this.
Yeah, that's why I want to be nice just in case I run into him.
Fair enough.
I get the sense, because he's our age, and I get the sense, this is a little creepy. I found his Twitter. I'm like, let me see what this guy's up to. But he never mentions that he was an actor. I get the sense he's not.
Yeah,
it's not a part of his life. That he.
Well,
I was going to say we should invite him on, but I don't. I don't know if
that's going a little bit above and beyond.
Yeah, come to my condo and we'll talk about Last Action Hero with you.
And the makeup that was on your hands.
Right. Well, that I would love to ask him. Like, what's the deal with the makeup on your hands? But
so what we've moved to in terms of the movie, we're outside now of Jack Slater 3, and we're in the real world, quote unquote, meaning real New York City in the film Last Action Hero.
So the movie goes out of focus. He goes up and talks to his buddy, the projectionist.
Yes.
What's his name?
Nick.
Nick, yes. So he tells Nick the movie's out of focus. Nick goes to focus the projector, and the credits are rolling. Now, I want to read the credits. I won't read the actor's name because I assume they're fake, but here are the parts that were on...
Jack Slater 3 credits.
Jack Slater 3 credits. It's in the middle of the credits, too, so we're not getting like the main cast. It starts with Scumbag number 4, Scumbag number 5.
Nice.
Scumbag number 6. Scumbag number 6, it's on there twice.
Oh.
So that must have been confusing in casting.
Very confusing for casting.
Scumbag number 7, 8, 9. And then SWAT Cop 1, SWAT Cop 2, all the way to 6. No numbers there for some reason. It makes me crazy. Like, I need consistency. And then finally, Scumbag Leader and Man with Breasts. Oh, and Keith Farley as himself.
Very interesting.
So I don't know what the deal is with all those. Someone had some fun.
Yeah, I'm sure there were some inside jokes there. So
I just wanted to get that on record. I paused the movie and I wrote down all the credits.
You put in some time on that.
Just so we would know.
I did, in watching this, some of the things that I took note of, and this is a point to bring one of them up, I just made note of things that either don't exist or just the concept would have changed. I don't think it ruins the movie, but just the fact that there is a projectionist and it's the old film and it's not a digital projector. I find that interesting and those kind of things. There's a few other things in this movie in particular, but that's just one to kind of highlight for younger people. Things actually used to be on film, and there had to be people that would change them over.
That would have definitely, if Last Action Hero was made today, that would definitely be a part of the story of just like, oh, they don't need projectionists anymore.
Yep.
This was too early for digital film. They couldn't quite work that in, and that actually, speaking of that, I think it's interesting that there's this whole subplot through Last Action Hero of that movie theater is going to be torn down.
You're getting to another business point, but go ahead.
the movie theater is going to be torn down and replaced with a Lowe's 10,
Yes.
which is supposed to be like, oh my god, 10 screens.
Cutting edge, 10 screens. That was one of the things. It was sort of the business side.
I'm glad you noticed that too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting in a couple of ways for me. Is that here in Chicago and like throughout other urban areas that are going through a revival, the movement's the complete opposite. To take old theaters like that and change them into live venues, which is really, really interesting and a cool thing to do. So it's interesting, back in the 90s in New York, it's certainly the New York portrayed there is a lot different than I think New York City is even today in terms of the crime. They play it up a little bit, but the fact that they were going to tear down this old theater to put up a new cutting-edge technology, 10 screens. But what's interesting to me is that we're now 20 years later, and really, the theaters, those 10 screens, those size theaters can't make it anymore. And those wouldn't be in the city anyway for the most part. They'd be out in the suburbs. But it's ironic, and that's another one of those kind of business things that those actually are struggling and probably will, go the way of the dinosaur over time. So it's somewhat ironic that what they're allegedly tearing it down for and Nick's going to be out of a job for completely doesn't make any sense 20 years later, because really you'd be tearing down the 10 screen to build something else. But more importantly, that old theater, it would have intrinsic value in itself to become some sort of other venue, probably a live venue where you would have ushers, which is kind of interesting.
And it's set up completely all you have to do is take the screen away, and it's
exactly.
live. It's the idea that particular theater would be turned into a multiplex.
Doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. Also, I just want to point out, there's that subplot in the movie, and you expect at some point for the story to kind of go, oh, but we found a way to save the theater. Nope. At the end of the movie, they're still going to tear down that theater.
Yes.
They don't even remotely save it.
There's nothing. You're left. Maybe it was for Last Action Hero 2. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, it's set up for the long epic, saga that is the Last Action Hero franchise. So Nick invites him to this. He's going to screen Last Action Hero 4. He invites him to come, I guess, later that night.
I think it's supposed to be, which is also something that's ironic because I don't remember, we were younger, like you said, Danny's age at that time. I don't remember midnight screenings of stuff being open where you could buy tickets. But now, I mean, that's the hugest thing, right? I mean, when the new Star Wars opens later this year, I don't know when the first screenings will be, but people try and get there at midnight for that screening all the time, where this would have just been Nick running it to make sure that the print worked fine.
He's checking the print. I'm sorry. I said screening, but you're right. He's checking the print, he says.
But I found it, very interesting that now that theaters have found a new avenue, a new way to make money, maybe they took a cue from Last Action Hero. I doubt that. But the screening that Nick is going to be doing is later that night to make sure that the print works. I'm assuming it's Thursday night going into Friday because movies always open on Friday. That doesn't happen all the time anymore. But yes, Danny's supposed to be going to the screening to make sure that all of the film stock is going to be able to run through and work correctly. But it was another thing in my notes here, I'm glad we got to it, that I found interesting that how times have changed, that people now line up and are actually waiting in line the night before midnight comes around so they can actually get into the theater to watch it with a live audience.
It's almost like the theater's decided, we're going to be showing this anyway to an empty room. Why not just charge tickets?
Why not charge people to be in here?
Right. Yeah, so he invites him to just come to when he's checking the print. Danny leaves, and he passes a couple of posters. One, which is an awesome, or like a stand-up, like a cardboard stand-up, right?
Yes, cardboard cutout, sure.
And one of them is an awesome one of Arnold holding dynamite and a shotgun or something.
Yes.
I kind of want to own that. And then there's another one, and it says introducing Meredith Caprice, but it's Bridget Wilson.
Yes.
Why are they not using her real name? Because this is also her first movie. They're playing up Bridget Wilson is playing Meredith Caprice, who is playing, I forget Jack's daughter's name. Why is there that extra layer in there? That's weird.
I think it's Whitney's the daughter's name.
Yes, Whitney
But
Slater.
what I'm not sure, and I didn't look up, is if Bridget Wilson had any credits prior to that. That's my only thought.
She hadn't.
Oh, well,
so
then
it would have worked fine.
Then if Shane Black's listening, that makes no sense. I mean, I don't understand that. Just introducing Bridget Wilson. What's the difference?
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I guess maybe they just didn't know who they were going to cast, and they went make up a name, and then no one ever changed it. Or just
Could be.
So anyway, so he walks outside. You get a shot of him walking through past a bunch of other movie theaters that also look just as run down.
And I think the implication is that they're running porn, and that this would have been in the seedy. It's not. For some reason, I thought it was
because I wrote down the names on the marquees. Also.
Okay.
Anything that shows up in text, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, that
So,
Good.
okay, here are all the marquees on the street. I Want Your Blood, not a real movie apparently. Chinatown at Midnight, Murder in Times Square, and She Played with Fire, which are all real movies. They're all like 40s film noirs. So yeah, these are like and one of them's playing film noirs, like apparently very classy theater. They look run down.
Yeah.
But it's like, why is Nick's theater being singled out? I mean, granted, it looks like it's really
It's in need of some investment.
Also, you can tell that it's an old theater because everyone who works there is old.
Yeah.
So
Danny's late for school, and so Nick shoos him out of the building. He rushes back to school, and he's mid-class. I'm guessing a few periods in, probably not first period. Mid-class, he's not noticed by the teacher.
That's true. Yeah, he's so late, and
He's so late, not noticed. She just keeps on going.
She doesn't care at all.
Doesn't care. But you know what? Maybe it's a public school in New York, and maybe that is accurate. I don't know.
It's probably just typical.
And he sits down in the back and takes his place.
Yeah, and so she introduces Laurence Olivier's Hamlet,
Yes.
which we're getting. Before we get to the part that we both really want to get to, she mentions. I love the fact that she goes,
Sir Laurence Olivier.
Yeah, did I say Laurence of Olivier? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that was the dumb. That was really stupid. Yeah, Laurence Olivier. She starts in the middle of Hamlet and just shows the scene where he stabs
Claudius.
Polonius. I don't know. At one point I was familiar with Hamlet. Claudius
I'm pretty sure that the scene that's on there is where he's thinking about
whoever
murdering Claudius, but I don't think he does it. And then yes, later he does accidentally stab Polonius, but Polonius is listening behind and
so. But regardless, my point is much like Jack Slater 3. We're just starting in the middle. The teacher's like, we don't need to watch the whole thing. We'll start.
We
here.
just need this clip.
Right,
it's like ESPN. I just need the highlights.
Exactly. But I love the fact that she introduces Laurence Olivier as, you might know him as Zeus in Clash of the Titans or from his Polaroid commercials.
I love that too. That the fact again, Polaroid is now hip again and has made its way back. And is like a viable product again, but it had disappeared for a while, so I thought it was great that the kids then, in 1993, would know Laurence Olivier from the Polaroid commercial.
I don't know how hip it was then. First of all, Clash of the Titans is from the early 80s. We were Danny Madigan's age, like we've been saying.
Yeah.
Were you that familiar with Clash of the Titans? Like,
No,
that's before.
I certainly wasn't,
So that just shows how unhip that teacher is. She's like, here's that hip new film he was in, 10 years old. But then I don't think Polaroid was hip back then, because
Okay.
I looked up the ad.
Is it bad?
Let's watch the ad.
The age of miracles. Pocket size, folding,
He just stands
electronically
here
controlled, motor driven,
and shows you the camera.
single lens reflex camera that quite simply does the impossible.
I'm Laurence Olivier. Check this out.
Count a bit closer. The
Count a bit
Polaroid
closer.
SX70
It's the
land camera.
It's the least hip commercial you could
Wow.
imagine. And he takes a
10
picture.
picture
Wait, he
film
takes a
set.
picture of like some old.
Inside this, there is a wafer-thin
Very
battery,
frilly, like,
providing
chair
fresh
or
power
something.
to the camera every time you load
Yeah,
it.
it essentially is just like a YouTube instructional video, but would have been run on broadcast
Indoor
TV. This is
flash
awesome.
bar.
It is. It's like, here's how you work the camera, but it's a commercial.
Yes.
And he points it at something. We can't see what he's pointing. Oh, it's like it's
The
this
electric button.
old timey clock.
And the impossible happens.
The impossible happens.
In minutes, you have a finished photograph that says...
I
So
mean,
do you think
based
kids
on the
from-
vintage of this commercial, though, it looks like it might have been older than that, and so maybe they
Maybe.
actually did need to
It's a
explain like how a Polaroid
Polaroid
worked. I don't think so. We might have to do a little bit more.
This is the only Laurence Olivier Polaroid commercial that has survived on YouTube. So
Yeah, but it's not dated, so you don't know how old it is. Either way, it is not like an awesome. I find it to be an awesome commercial because it's basically just an instructional video.
Right.
But either way, if you're probably right that teacher knew who Laurence Olivier was from those, but those kids, there's no way that they would have known who he was from either one of those two references.
No.
And I thought I had read that the actress who plays that teacher, I think, was married to Laurence Olivier at some point. I'd read, again, that's IMDb. I'm not sure how accurate that necessarily is in one of those entries, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read. That actress has a connection to Laurence Olivier.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I
So-
just skimmed the IMDb.
So yes,
I missed
again,
them.
she introduces it midway through, just like we get Jack Slater 3.
That leads us into Danny's daydream.
Yes, which we will lead it off, or at least I want to. I want to say that if for nothing else, this vindicates
It's amazing.
everything that happens in the world outside of the movie Jack Slater 4, because for the next 45 seconds or whatever it is, and this also probably vindicates Danny Madigan's existence to me, because his imagination for this clip is worth it. Every time I watch it, it is still fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just play the clip because Nothing. No amount of talk can do it justice. Oh, also, I like the fact that Danny is impatient with this movie to get to the good stuff, and like I was watching it,
Just do it.
kind of feeling the same way. Just like, let's just get to it. Come on. Here we go. Black and
Hey,
white.
Claudius.
Except for the flame on the lighter, of course.
You killed my father. Big mistake.
Throws him through a stained glass window. That awesome
in the
hook.
state of Denmark. And
The score is great.
is taking out the trash.
Throws the skull.
It would be one of the greatest movie trailers of all time.
Oh, by the way, I'm slacking. It's 2, 3, 4.
Stay thy hand, fair prince.
Death
Who
count.
said I'm fair?
This guy's 5. Shoots a guy. Shoots another guy. 6, 7. Just mowing guys down with the
No one's
machine gun.
going
That's
to
8.
tell this sweet prince good night.
To be or not to be? Not to be.
All of
And then-
Elsinore is destroyed.
And then Danny, right? And then Danny's imagination has the worst special effects. Like,
Yes.
that castle exploding looks ridiculous.
But what I do love, too, though, is then when you go through this, which we probably should spend more time on, but just the fact Schwarzenegger is Hamlet, is there anything...
No, let's spend some time on it.
Is there anything greater than that? But what you're then getting to is that from the bad special effects explosions of the entire castle Elsinore, you cut to Wile E. Coyote, which is, I think, kind of interesting in a lot of ways that they use that kind of movie, his imagination, to him watching TV in a cartoon is... I don't even know like how many dimensions or screens that we're kind of, working in right now that we're watching Last Action Hero. He was watching a movie within a movie, which he is then kind of spaced out, come up with his new trailer for an action movie, a version of Hamlet.
Right.
But then we cut to him watching a cartoon at home. It's like, how did I get here?
Right, it's like Wile E. Coyote or something.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's Wile E.
That's Wile E.
Coyote.
Coyote.
And I think in some ways why they chose this and did this is because then once you get into Jack Slater 4, everything is an Acme product, and I think maybe they wanted to kind of have that tied together somehow, since everything that Wiley always purchased to try and catch the Roadrunner was an Acme product.
Is there Acme products? I didn't notice that.
Oh, yeah, look at it. I'll try and point them out. Maybe I should have had a bell to ring every time there was an Acme product in Last Action, or not, excuse me, in Jack Slater 4.
There's a cartoon cat in it also. So.
Yes, but there are many Acme products. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on I'll call it Danny's movie trailer, which I think it would be one of the greatest movie trailers of all time.
Well, the one thing I think Danny is apparently more familiar with Hamlet than we are, because that's for a kid his age, that's a remarkable familiarity with Hamlet, considering he's never in class and all that. But he's like still like, "Stay thy hand, fair prince."
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's a very specific reference.
He has a very specific line from Polonius, and he's even
knows
referencing, which that's the reason why I'm going to look it up when we're done with this. I'm pretty sure that it's Claudius that Olivier is trying to kill, because then you cut to Claudius being thrown out. But even more importantly, Polonius, I believe, is accidentally stabbed because he's listening and spying behind that like cloak,
Yeah,
and that Hamlet, I don't think
thinks it's
intended to
Claudius.
kill Polonius, which is then funny because in Danny's version, he cuts it down, "Stay thy hand, fair prince," and then he not only stabs him, then he pulls out a machine gun and starts mowing people down.
Who says I'm fair?
But you're right, because he's got a reference to Hamlet sitting with the skull of Yorick and
throws
using it.
Yorick at
He
a guy.
throws Yorick's skull to knock out a guy. He has actually a very good understanding or knowledge of a lot of the key aspects of Hamlet that he's able to wrap up or sum up in 45 seconds.
So maybe Danny is just like one of these kids who doesn't have to try hard. So he just gets by, like he doesn't have to study. He's just really smart and can
He
just
just naturally comes to him.
lazy his way through
Yes.
school. Okay, so our body count is now up to 8, just so in case you're keeping track. Anyway, so we get a little bit of his home life. We meet his mother,
mom. Yep.
played by Mercedes Rule, basically playing the exact same character she played in Big.
Yep.
I'm the mom in this movie. Hello, like that's really all she does.
That's pretty much all she does, and you also, just like in Big, I think he has a dad.
No, I don't think so.
I can't remember now, but either way, whether he does or he doesn't in Big, she plays the mom, and there's no dad figure that you ever see.
Right.
This, you have backstory and explanation a little bit, but in Big you don't. But yes, she basically plays the exact same role.
Yeah, I don't remember if she does, if there's
Yeah.
an explanation in Big. But either way, yeah, it's
Unfortunately for her, it is kind of a thankless role, and they needed kind of a I don't know if wet blanket is the right, but it's kind of like the.
But she's not, though. She's a very understanding. She covers for him his absence at school.
That is true, which as a parent, I'm not sure I would do that, and if she would have her charter membership of the PTA revoked if caught.
Yes, her charter membership. Thank you for reminding me, because charter membership of the PTA, I looked it up, PTA was founded in 1890-something. A charter member of the PTA.
I think what she probably meant was
that chapter or something.
that chapter, or she is, a long-standing, upstanding member of the PTA, whatever.
Right. So anyway, his mom goes to work, and this is where he gets robbed.
Yes.
There's really nothing interesting about this.
Yeah,
other than the fact that the robber has an Alfred E. Newman pin.
I didn't notice that. And then it also establishes, I'm not sure, I've never tested the distance for Danny's arms for him to go fish and get that key out. It seems like it's too far, but I think that it almost feels like that scene, you need to have it be quote-unquote real, right? Because it doesn't make sense when you see the guy. To me, that robber, he's just walking up and down Danny's hallway waiting for like somebody to open the door.
Right.
It doesn't make sense, but it's almost like Danny needs that key because it comes up later in the movie effectively and is used. But other than that...
Oh, that's why that scene's there.
Yes.
I never put that two and two together.
I think it is, but if so, it's a lot. I think it's dual purpose. Because Danny has the key because he winds up later
He unlocks the
handcuffs. Right.
Is that the key? He has this key?
That's the leap and assumption I made, is that he still had the key from this in his pocket when he goes into the movie.
Oh. I never made that connection. So wait, a real key unlocks a fictional...
There's many reasons it doesn't make sense to me. Like how... whatever.
I don't know.
The Terminator. What doesn't make sense to me is in the Terminator universe, you got to go through the machine with no clothes and naked to be able to go through. But somehow Danny not only goes through the film screen with all of his clothes on, but apparently metal keys can go through the film screen too. I don't get how. And the same thing, you can come out of the film screen with handguns. None of it makes sense.
That's science. This is magic. Come on.
Okay, that's true. You got me in the sense, because I'm pretty sure when Danny looks at the clock to go out, when the robber is just walking up and down his hall, it's 11-something, and somehow he gets himself unlocked. First of all, he's robbed. I don't know how long that takes. He gets himself unlocked.
Well, I don't know if the robber takes anything. He's upset. They have no
nothing
TV,
of value.
No VCR. He's upset they don't have a VCR. It's 1993.
Yeah.
I'm glad you have that in your notes.
That's on my notes too.
No VCR.
What are
people have laser discs now? Like,
yes.
How much do VCRs cost in 1993?
I'm not sure that the street value on that hot VCR was going to be that great. So you effectively he gets robbed, but the time doesn't make sense to me because it's something after 11. Yeah. But in all that time, he gets robbed, however long that takes. He gets himself out, goes down to the police station, files a police report. The police call his mom. And somehow he makes it for the midnight, screening. And Nick may have delayed the screening a bit.
I get the impression that he doesn't get there until like 2 or 3, and Nick was waiting
maybe.
the whole time.
I always kind of had an issue with the timing, but again, Nick may have just waited for him because they were friends. That's fair enough.
That's the impression I get.
So effectively, fast forward, we're now in the theater, and Nick has got a song and dance to do for Danny before screening of the movie.
Well, before we get to that, to add to the confusion of the timeline, in the time since that morning when he left the theater and the time when he came back, all the marquees around the theater have changed.
Oh,
every single one of them.
You got me on that. I did not realize that.
Well, in addition to Your Blood or Mine, now it's a double feature with I Want Your Blood. So now it used to be just the one, and now it's the double feature. And then Screaming Mimi has replaced all of the film noirs, which is apparently also a real movie.
That's very interesting. I mean, I could understand it if it wasn't supposed to be like around midnight, because if he was running the print, that movie would open, in my mind, the next day is Friday, and so those theaters might very well be changing theirs over, but the fact that a couple,
it's like 6 hours.
Yeah, because the theaters aren't going to open, for screenings until much later on Friday, so it doesn't make sense. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So Nick opens. He's a little upset, but he lets him in, and then he gives him a spiel about how the theater is closing. And I want to play a moment I never noticed until this time I watched it. But Nick, I didn't write down the timestamp, so if this takes too long, I'll just cut it out. Nick talks about how he became
in show business, if you will.
Yeah, and then Danny's reaction. Wait, I'm gonna mute while I skip around. Danny's reaction to that is so awkward. It's like the longest silence I'm not going to be able to find it. But regardless, he says, like, yeah, I worked my way up to Usher. It's still show business. And then they cut to Danny, and he's just like, he just has this
want to see the
awkward
movie.
smile on his face, and he doesn't know what to say. And it's like 8 seconds long. It's the longest shot.
I do remember that. And the only other thing I'll note on kind of Nick's thing about the magic ticket, which is one of the Simpsons lines, magic ticket my ass, McBain, that Chief Wiggum says, which is a great line. The magic ticket, what I find interesting is, because I've read a little bit on Houdini, it's interesting that they picked Houdini, and I'm sure it's because he was a well-known magician that probably would have fit the timeline for Nick.
Right.
But Houdini specifically tried to dispel in his day the idea of not that he was an escape artist, that it wasn't magic. The whole concept of a magic ticket is the antithesis of what Harry Houdini, the performer, really believed in, and does not sync up at all with Houdini.
It's just the screenwriters trying to, like, okay, how do we get him in the movie? Let's say there's a magic ticket. Well, what's the deal with that? Well, Houdini gave it to the production. It's just this ticket is nonsense.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense. Well, the thing that I wrote down, I wrote in my notes because they're talking about, like, he's like, I got this ticket from Harry Houdini, and I've always been afraid to use it because what if it didn't work? And Nick, Danny's like, what if it does work? And he's like, what if it did? And I'm sitting here going, like, what are you guys talking about? You don't even know. It's all you know is that it's supposedly a magic ticket.
Right.
What if it works? What works doing what?
How? What does it do?
What the hell are you guys talking about?
I mean, I understand they needed a way to get Danny into Jack Slater 4. And unfortunately, it was one of the things that, again, it's not a great movie. It's a good movie because the device that they chose is sort of lazy and doesn't work all that well.
He should have just fallen asleep. If you set up like it's 3 a.m, it's really late.
Yeah. And
he's already fall asleep, and then he wakes up in the movie.
Yeah.
Why do you need a magic thing? Like, there's no reason.
I think that the reason is, and getting later to it, is they then wanted, which we think is some of the weaker stuff, is they wanted Benedict and Slater to be in Danny's world, and with him waking up, you can't have that. You need the magic element to pull.
I mean, you could still say it's magic. You could still do all that. It's dumb. And also, there's another line where Nick says, it's like, the ticket has a mind of its own. It does what it wants to do.
How do you know?
You just said you don't know what it does. That's literally just there so that the screenwriters are going like, look, don't worry about it. It has a mind of its own.
It'll work when it needs to.
When the movie needs it to. And
yes.
It won't work when the movie doesn't need it to.
So it's a lazy plot device.
It's really stupid. Like this ticket. And so much of the plot of this movie revolves around this ticket. Who has the ticket? Oh, Benedict's got the ticket. We need to get the ticket back. They needed to figure out a better solution because it's really bad.
So, okay, I mean, see, we're being fair. We don't love everything about it. There are some things that don't work. But either way, he tears the ticket up, and Danny then proceeds to move in, which Nick probably has one of my favorite lines of asking whether or not is Jack Slater going to win?
Yeah, he's like, is Jack Slater going to save the day?
Yeah, there it is. So,
something like that.
Yeah, Nick got... Because otherwise it's kind of a thankless role that he actually has in this movie for the most part.
Yeah, no, you mean Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. He's just kind of there to set things in motion.
Yeah.
So then the opening credits of Jack Slater 4 start.
Yes.
They are amazing.
Yes, they are. And it is where you finally get Columbia Pictures.
Yeah, exactly. And then every single credit it burns or explodes. It's like Columbia Pictures, and then that burns away, and then there's like a brick wall, and
it destroys, bashes through that,
and then there's a concrete wall, and it explodes. Oh, these credits are amazing. Set to a Megadeth song of all things.
Yes.
This movie, by the way, I forgot to bring up because there's an Alice in Chains song earlier, and it plays for like 10 seconds and then it immediately goes away. You can kind of feel the business happening in this movie. I don't know if you want to talk about that since you're more interested in the business side than me, but you can tell these songs are only in the movie because someone made a deal somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
the Alice in Chains song, the Megadeth song. It's like, where can we put this song? Okay, put the Alice in Chains song in the first 15 seconds of the movie, and then it'll just fade out and. Don't worry about it. It's the songs. Some of them are great, but some of them are just like
they're like bolted on. I mean, in some ways, when you get to the premiere out in the real world, you get MC Hammer, which is absolutely fantastic. That he is the one who's cutting the deal for the soundtrack for Slater 5.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. We may as well talk about it now because it's 1993. And later in the movie, MC Hammer corners Jack Slater thinking he's Arnold and goes, the deal's done, right? Jack Slater 5, the soundtrack. It's like, sorry, Hammer, it's 1993. The deal's not done. You're not getting this deal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 1993. You're barely famous still. Anyway, so yeah, Jack Slater 4 starts.
And it is an absolutely fantastic opening to a movie. I want to see Jack Slater 4. I mean,
It is.
I want more of Jack Slater 4 based on the first minute you get.
This scene is pitch perfect, a pitch perfect like send up. It is a plausible opening scene to an action movie, heightened just slightly. They nail it. So you and I have always been fans of Charles Dance. Ever since this movie, we were way ahead of the curve on Charles Dance.
Yeah, and so all I will say is I hadn't seen or read any of the Game of Thrones, so I started watching after Keen had started watching Game of Thrones. And he warned me before the episode where Tywin Lannister makes his first appearance. He said, "You're going to be really excited about somebody." He didn't tell me the character's name.
Yep.
He didn't have to. About somebody's appearance. It's going to be a new character, and it's pretty early on in, I think, season 1 of Game of Thrones.
It's late in season 1.
Late in season 1.
Episode 8 or something.
And by the way, can I just say, it's such an awesome scene for Charles Dance. He's like gutting an animal and skinning it. It's just perfect for any Game of Thrones fans out there. And then you are absolutely right. When I saw it, I got so excited. All I could think of, I couldn't even think of Benedict. All I could think of, it's the henchman with the glass eye. And I think I might have sent you a text or called you immediately. I said, I've gotten to it. I am so glad Charles Dance is in the show. I know that they know what they're doing with casting.
But see, like people love him now, and he's really well known because of that show.
Yes.
But I feel like we were some of the few who were like, "Oh my God, that's Charles Dance. He's on Game of Thrones." But more than anybody else, more than what's his face, Ned Stark,
Sean Bean.
Sean Bean, yeah.
Yes.
Because that was like, oh, he's obviously the star. It's like, no, Charles Dance is the star of this show.
Absolutely. And when I saw him, I mean, look, up until that point, I'm not a huge fantasy fan, but I do like Game of Thrones. I think it's really well done. What I said is, yeah, there's some pretty strong actors. There's like some okay ones, but I will tell you, when I got to Tywin Lannister, I didn't know anything about that character. But man, learning more, having watched it, whoever at HBO or whoever cast, they clearly must have seen Last Action Hero and other things. I'm not saying Charles Dance hasn't done other things.
He's done other things.
But the point is that he is a great actor. I mean, he is a theater-trained stage actor. Fantastic. I almost wonder, like, when I watch this, it's like, why did Charles Dance ever accept to do this movie?
Well, I'll tell you that you're getting, again, to my IMDb trivia, but he was apparently at least the 4th option.
Wow.
Let me scroll down to my...
then whoever was casting, they don't know what they're doing. Because...
But he is great in this movie, and you wouldn't think... Because it's a comic performance to a certain extent.
Yes.
And you wouldn't think, like, oh, it's just him being a silly, action movie villain. He's giving a great performance in this.
He's giving a great performance.
And he's scary. Like, he's threatening. He's really good.
He's got it all. And this is what I say actually about why he's so perfect in Game of Thrones, is that what you need from Tywin Lannister, but more importantly, I think in a villain in a show like that, is that you need them to be believable, but they can't be a cartoon type villain, which Anthony Quinn in this is kind of the cartoon villain, if you will, in Last Action Hero, which is fine. But in Dance's performance in Game of Thrones, you need somebody that you could see yourself liking or being on their side at some point. Charles Dance does it, and Tywin Lannister, he's perfect.
He's much more sympathetic on the show than he is in the books. I've read the books, and he's not as likable, and it's because of Charles Dance.
And what I was going to say, though, is his interpretation of it, his performance, I think in the show version at least, and I don't know the books, but the show version, because it's so dour and dark so often, to not lose the audience, I think your villains can't just be... the old villains in the pre-talkie days of like tying the woman down to the railroad tracks, right? They can't be the arch villain. There has to be some depth. And both is Benedict in this. You're right. He's scary at times. He's funny at times. He's a great actor. It's unbelievable casting.
I just want us to take credit for knowing about him. We've loved him for years and years and years,
yes.
Way before Game of Thrones.
And so what I'll say is I didn't bring them with me, but I have some of the Last Action Hero Mattel action figures, and I will tell you, the first one that I had to have, it wasn't Jack Slater. It wasn't Jack Slater. It was Benedict. If there was only one I could buy on eBay, I had to have Benedict, and it's all because of Charles Dance.
I don't blame you. So yes, and to get back to him being the 4th option, according to IMDb, again, consider the source, he was the 4th option after Alan Rickman. Makes sense.
Understandable with Die Hard and McTiernan.
Yeah, McTiernan had worked with him before.
Yeah.
Timothy Dalton.
Oh, my God.
I think that would have been pretty good.
It would have been pretty good, but I think I'll stick with Charles Dance.
He was only a couple of years off of Bond, so that would have been really strange. And then the last one you will really like, William Atherton.
That is fantastic.
I don't know if they actually made these people offers. Obviously, IMDb is very vague, but
Yeah.
these are people who were considered for Benedict.
What's funny, I mean, you can kind of see some of the similarities in terms of, those names a little bit.
William
but
Atherton wouldn't have worked.
No.
He's American. You can't. This character, I can't imagine Benedict, an American Benedict.
No, and since the fact that three of the other names on that list are British actors, that clearly was the intention, that's what this character is supposed to be.
Yeah, I would assume.
Even if he was the fourth option. Not that I dislike any of them, or even Alan Rickman probably would have been good, but I actually think that might have been a distraction in terms of, at the time, it's not that far removed from Die Hard. And particularly when you're... Now, I guess some people would say, you know what, maybe you want him because you already have Arnold and referencing other action movies. They reference Die Hard in this movie in terms of, you think the guy's dead, but then he shows up at the end.
But I think he's, Alan Rickman can be very funny. And I think him doing basically a parody of his character from Die Hard, that could have been good.
Yes.
But I definitely would not trade, believe me.
It was not a downgrade by any stretch of the imagination.
There's no question about it. And the other thing I want to point out is Anthony Quinn. I never noticed him that much previous viewings, but this time watching it, he's really good in this movie too. He's really funny.
No, and that's what I said. He's kind of like the cartoon villain in a way, and that he's only there for the comic relief, but on the villain side, if you will. But he is. He's really good. I mean, for the purpose, the role that I don't think you needed Anthony Quinn. It also doesn't necessarily make sense, his casting of the Italian mob boss. But
his ethnicity is ambiguous
Yeah,
enough that
I guess.
he can play whatever. So they set up this plot of Jack Slater 4, which really doesn't matter. Again, it's kind of unnecessary. At least in this case, it makes sense because we're seeing the first scene of the movie as opposed to the last scene. But something to do with he's kidnapped Jack Slater's favorite second cousin in the whole world.
In the whole world.
Whole world.
There is a purpose to that, because I didn't think about this at first. But what you have to then, because the movies have gotten so, maybe not ridiculous, I take that as so many people, like his son, we later find out in this movie has been killed. There's been so many people that have already been gotten to in the previous Slater movies that they've had to get down to the favorite second cousin, because there's almost nothing else that you can go after of Jack Slater's, is kind of what I'm taking that as.
But again, his son died in the previous movie, and now
I understand.
They killed my second cousin.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Either way, so what you get, it is a perfect opening for like a very plausible, but just a little bit more over the top. But you get the establishment of Benedict, which is great, and then you get to introducing Jack within the new movie, going up to his second cousin Frank's house.
Yeah, introduced in the most casual way.
Yes.
We saw the end of the previous movie, he gets this
Yes.
big introduction. Now, in this movie, he just pulls up to his car and goes, "Hi, guys."
He's got bags of groceries.
Right.
I mean, mundane task, and you've got placeholders of. I'm assuming they've just aged Riggs and Murtaugh, and they're just now older beat cops, and
Yeah.
they're now walking a beat instead of detectives.
But it just cracks me up that his first line in Jack Slater 4 is, "Hi, guys."
Hey guys,
He just kind of waves.
drug bust.
But yeah, the plot doesn't matter. He's gonna convince Jack Slater's second cousin that he's gonna join forces with the Torelli mob, and then something. Who cares?
Yes.
It's not important.
And it's a plant of bad information, but it's not actually.
But here's the thing: we learn later that Practice, who we haven't met yet, but Practice is also in
working for
Anthony Quinn. What's his name? Tony Vivaldi.
Vivaldi.
Yes,
Tony
'cause he goes,
Vivaldi
"He's
is
number one,"
which is actually great.
That's the moment where I went like, Anthony Quinn, you are He's giving.
He's not mailing it in for this one.
It's a fun performance.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. Yeah, but so Jack Slater pulls up to his favorite second cousin's house.
Yes.
They go inside. He's in there. He's beat up. And Art Carney.
Yes.
Again, in his final performance.
Final performance for Art Carney.
Beat up the entire movie. He gets 2 scenes. In both scenes, he's completely
Beat and tied up.
Yeah.
He has 2 scenes. He's tied up and beaten.
Have a good career, Art Carney. This is your farewell.
You're about to be blown up in your house.
Although I do like his death, where he just gives the information and he goes, "I'm out of here," and dies. So then Jack Slater finds a set of cards.
Yes.
What are these cards?
They're numbered.
I should leaf through them and see what these
Yes.
cards are.
They do. They have Slater's name on it, however, so that he does know
That's
that they're
right.
for him.
They're addressed to him.
Yes. So I don't know what would have happened if Riggs and Murtaugh, the placeholders, would have went in first. If they just would have waited for Slater.
Yeah, we can't open this. This is addressed to Jack Slater.
Yeah, this is like official mail. We can't open these.
Federal offense to open this envelope.
Yes.
So bomb goes off, which maybe there's no reason to really dig into the logic of Jack Slater 4. Like, are the cards actually causing the explosion, or is someone just nearby, like, hitting a button?
Who knows?
What we find out later is that the house blows up, Slater survives, minor wounds, both cops dead.
Of course, with 2 days to retirement.
Yes, I'm not prepared for those two cops. 1, 2.
They are both gone.
They are both dead. Their body count is at 10.
Yes.
So,
I can't remember. Are you counting the puns as well or no?
oh, yeah. Did we miss a pun?
The only one I don't know.
One's coming up for sure.
Yeah, one's coming up. Okay.
Yeah, we can't forget about that pun.
Yes.
Let me. Yeah, I don't think we've missed a pun.
Okay.
We're at 10 deaths and 1 pun.
Which you're right, for a PG-13 kid-friendly action movie, 10 in the first. I can't see the counter, but we're probably only 20 minutes into this movie.
Yeah, 27.
27 minutes in.
We got to pick up the pace, by the way. We've been going a long time. We're only a quarter of the way into the
All right.
movie. But what was your question? Oh yeah, 10 and 11. I think I missed one. My notes say 10 and 11.
Okay.
So I think I missed one during the dreams, the Hamlet sequence.
Yes, there were a lot that got wrapped up pretty quickly.
I'm going to stop hitting this ding because it's a pain in the ass. I thought it would be funny, but no, it's too much of a hassle. Okay, so henchmen, or I guess lackeys, not henchmen. We learned
Yes.
the difference later. They come out of nowhere in like a weird 50s pickup truck,
Yes.
and a chase starts. The ticket starts to glow.
Yes.
Danny gets pulled into the movie. He ends up in the back seat.
Yeah, some dynamite. Jack is able to fire a pistol and
That's right.
change the trajectory of dynamite without it exploding, and it winds up in the theater, which is vacant other than Danny. Is the only one. He's the only one that sees it. The ticket starts working. It explodes. Cut to Danny's in the movie.
And by the way, when they come back out of the theater later, the movie theater is not exploded. It's fine.
Yes.
So what happened to that dynamite?
I don't know what happened at that time.
He seemed to be propelled into the movie.
The popcorn maybe put out the wick.
But he seemingly got propelled into the movie by the force of the blast.
Yes.
So did the thing explode or not?
What we're doing in Injustice 2 is this chase sequence is absolutely fantastic.
Well, I'm just getting to the pun.
The pun is great, but just the fact that right now there are so many, there are just cars on fire that just to see swerves within like 10 feet of them, they
Right.
explode. I mean, it's fantastic.
It reminds me of this.
Fighting with no hands.
Thing is easy if the practice a lot and never ever get in heavy traffic.
Here we go. He shoots a guy who's holding dynamite. He lands in the ice cream truck. He explodes. Hits Die Hard guy because it's the guy from Die Hard in the back of the head. With an ice cream truck.
It's that guy, Cone of Phrase.
It's still funny to me so many times. So
Ice that guy to cone a phrase. That's pun 2 and 3. I'm counting that as 2 different
that
puns.
is fair. It is probably every time I watch that sequence, I laugh because what you have to understand if you've seen it, pay attention. There are intentional continuity errors because the trajectory of the guy who launches in the ice cream truck changes because first he's going like backwards and falling out, but then his body falls into the front of the ice cream truck in the front windshield, which then his body just makes an ice cream truck explode. So I believe
he's holding dynamite.
Okay, but he's going. It's sort of like the JFK, right? He's going backwards, but then somehow he's falling forwards into the windshield. If you go back and watch it, it makes no sense in terms of the physics involved. That's intentional. They did that intentionally.
Right.
But then it, of course, explodes, and the only thing that comes out is the trajectory of the ice cream cone, which impales somebody in the back of the head for maybe the greatest pun that Arnold has ever had.
Yeah, ice to that guy to cone a phrase.
Phrase.
It's a compound pun.
Yes.
He's putting 2 back to back.
Yes.
It's amazing. The chase continues. It goes into the LA River.
Yes, very much a Terminator 2 reference, I think, if you will, of getting down into the LA River for that famous chase sequence scene. Not that it hasn't been done in other movies. I mean,
that's true. I never even realized that.
Yeah, no, that's what I took it as, is they wanted to make sure he got down in there like in T2.
To be like, that's the LA River in Terminator 2? I always assumed that was kind of like just some kind of
no,
it seemed too narrow.
No,
I'm not familiar enough.
Yeah, I'm about 99% sure, because that's been used in a lot of movies, but
right.
I'm pretty sure. It's not the exact point, wherever it came to a point where he launches on the motorcycle, but it's the same venue, if you will.
Is there ever water in that river?
I've read. Yes, I believe that there is.
Okay. Again, I've never been to L.A., but I always see that thing in movies.
Yes.
And it's just like, what is that?
I think it's there just to establish, hey, we're shooting in L.A. right now.
I guess, yeah. It's the only city that has a weird empty river made of concrete.
Yes.
So they get away. They jump out of the side of the river in a minivan. They're chasing them in a minivan, which is funny.
With a minigun within the minivan.
There's one 50s truck, and there's, a minivan. Oh, yeah, minivan with a minigun.
Yes.
It took me a second just now when you said it. Like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's funny.
So the minigun in the minivan does not make it, and of course explodes, but it doesn't explode. It explodes midair. So it has already exploded even though it hasn't hit the ground yet.
Yeah, that one is not justified at all.
Yes.
The guy, the ice cream truck exploding, at least you say the guy's holding dynamite, but that minivan makes no sense.
But it's intentionally to not make sense because this is supposed to be so over the top.
It's super over the top.
Right.
They drive into a back lot, and Danny notices because the scenery's changed.
Yes.
It took me a while. I think when I was a kid and I watched this, I didn't understand that joke. Now it's completely obvious. Like, oh, right, now they're on the back lot.
Right.
The scenery has changed. I understand what he's saying. I remember
as a kid,
being like, yeah,
I didn't get that either.
Yeah, what's he talking about? And then they play chicken.
Yes.
And of course, Jack wins the chicken. I love the shot of the guy going like freaking out like at the last second.
It is just gross overacting, which is also great though in that sequence is that he crashes into, I'm assuming is like a lingerie photo shoot in LA.
Yeah.
And for those if you haven't seen it, I'm not sure who would buy any of that lingerie, but it is very much a parody of LA. I mean, it really, really plays up the absurdity of Los Angeles.
Do you think that's why that's there? I just think it's there for gratuitous. Like, let's just push PG-13 as far as we can.
I think it pushes PG-13, but it also because of the ridiculous when they later in the blockbuster, the clothing that like everybody has that's like it's like straight out of the Matrix. I just think it's really trying to be over the top of action movies where as skin tight clothing as can be, and LA is this really kind of far out place in terms of fashion.
I guess they definitely do comment later because Danny's saying, well, where are all the everyday women? It's
right.
Like, this is a movie. No, this is California.
This is California.
So yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
I always assumed it's like, why is that scene there? It's just to have women in lingerie.
I think it's to have them in lingerie, but I also think the lingerie because one of it has like rear view mirrors attached to it. It's just, I mean, it's like Bond movie clothes. I think that it was pushing it even further. It could have just been lingerie, but they went even further because they're trying to poke fun at Hollywood.
Yeah, like Hollywood fashion designers and
exactly.
impractical clothing.
That's what I always took it as.
Okay. So then
cut to the police station.
The police station with the most 90s hip hop you've ever heard.
Yes.
It's amazing. Sharon Stone is there, Robert Patrick is there.
Which this is like the layer upon layer. How that doesn't make sense to me at this point. Why are they there, right, in their T-1000, and I can't remember Basic Instinct, her character's name. Why are they there? I understand why. Right. For the movie purposes, it is clever, but in terms of Jack Slater 4, those characters can't exist in that movie. It doesn't make any sense.
Do you think they're implying that all movies take place in that one reality?
I don't know if that was the intention. That's a fair interpretation, but the reason that it doesn't it doesn't make sense is why is Benedict later in the movie going to all these other movies trying to pull out Dracula? He's
true.
Trying to pull out Freddy Krueger, right? I mean, if they really all exist in this kind of theoretical movie plane, if you will, whatever dimension that would be.
Right. Well, that would be really disturbing if you think somewhere Sophie's Choice is happening.
Yeah, yes.
You know what I mean? I wonder if they're trying to say that like there are always like every time you watch a movie there are things happening off screen that you're not seeing, and these are the things.
Yeah, and that is an interesting idea, but
maybe in Die Hard there's a cartoon cat right off screen the whole time. Like
they're very for all you know, John McClane had a cartoon cat as a partner back in New York, and you just didn't know it.
Right, exactly. All this stuff is very strange. Like,
yes.
Again, as a parody of action movies, this is the stuff. It's just like, what? This doesn't make any sense on any level.
It doesn't. I've always interpreted it, and I don't dislike it necessarily, but I've always interpreted it as it's them trying to push the parody, really trying to push on you, hey, this is not, and this is where I think the lack of communication in maybe the marketing was that this was not supposed to be a Schwarzenegger action movie, the final product. It was some action, but it was supposed to be a parody of all of his movies and other action movies. So I think they maybe in some of these things with the ironic, pairing up of the rabbi and the Aryan nation type. I mean,
Oh, is that what he's supposed to be?
Yeah, because his last name is like Kraus or something. I mean, he's clearly like a German.
Oh, I didn't.
Blonde hair, blue eye, partner up with the rabbi, who then goes, "Oy vey!" I mean, you've got all these kind of comedic pairings right on the partners. That's just trying to push the action cop buddy movie parody even further.
That's another movie that's happening.
Yes, and so what I'm saying is that all of these pairings, they're going out of their way to try and show you, hey, Last Action Hero, this is not supposed to be an action movie. There's some action components to it, but it's supposed to be a parody of all these movies, and that's what I don't think why it was a flop. I don't think it ever got through what this movie was supposed to be, and this movie was supposed to be poking fun at the genre.
Speaking of the cartoon cat, I just want to play this clip, and then we'll get back to the actual movie, but this made me laugh. Of all the things, this is, every time I watch this movie, something new makes me laugh, and this is the new thing. So they're talking about the cartoon cat, and Danny's saying, like, hey, there's a cartoon cat. Look, this is a movie. And the chief says something, and then, let's just watch it.
Hello?
He'll do it again tomorrow, so what's your point?
That cat is one of the best men I got.
Yeah.
Now, who is this for?
It's Arnold going, yeah.
Like, he thinks that he's a valuable member of the force.
But just the way he says it, the chief goes, he's a valuable member of the force, and Arnold just goes, yeah. That made me laugh this time. So we meet Practice.
Yes, John Practice, how you get to Carnegie Hall, which is a great actor in himself, F. Murray Abraham.
Is he?
I think F. Murray Abraham's a pretty good actor.
I don't agree.
All right, well, whatever.
He's an Oscar winner.
Yes.
But during my brief time reviewing DVDs, I saw a movie called Blood Monkey, straight to DVD, starring F. Murray Abraham.
Who needed a paycheck?
I mean, I think he always needs a paycheck. What has he ever... He was in one great movie.
Amadeus.
Yes.
Which is referenced in this, by the way.
It won 8 Oscars, of course, as we learned from Danny.
Yes.
And he was one of them. He won... I don't know if it was supporting or I guess it must have been lead. Because
he has more screen time than...
I would think so. But regardless, I know he won an Oscar for that. And what did he do since?
You may have me there. I may be only remembering the only movie that I've ever seen with him that I really, really liked.
And he's good in that. He's good in Amadeus, but he's playing kind of not untalented, but someone who is only moderately talented and who's jealous of...
So what you're saying is there's some irony there?
I think it was just good casting of just like, let's just cast this guy who is insecure about... I do get that sense from Maria. I mean, and I don't know. He's fine in this movie.
He's fine in this movie, and casting him sets up a great joke of not only referencing Amadeus that it won all these Oscars, trying to make them understand that this is a movie, but killing Mozart, to me, I just think is a great joke. I just do.
That is pretty funny.
I don't know. I kill a lot of people.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we find out later he's working for the mob.
Yes.
So why all the trouble of Jack's cousin, whatever. So, so they get teamed up. The chief decides...
that they should be partners.
Or no, well, first they call New York and they find out he doesn't exist.
Yes.
And then they team them up.
Yes.
Even in a movie reality, it's like, okay, just having the kid show up and then saying, you're his partner now, like, that's fine. But learning that he doesn't exist and then saying, you're Jack's new partner, that's the leap. That even in a movie, it's like, you just learn that there's no record of this person's existence. But you're a cop now.
You're a cop, you're going to work with Jack Slater, who we've called in the lieutenant governor to try and stop at previous hostage situations. We're going to partner you up with him.
So they go to the movie store, or the Blockbuster, actually, specifically. Not just a movie store.
Yes.
Talk about dating in the movie.
Danny is, again, going to try and prove that this is a movie. And I find it interesting, again, it's 1993. Blockbuster is probably at its peak when
definitely.
It is crushing the mom-and-pop video stores, which... Fast forward to this podcast today, and Blockbuster, if it is not out of existence yet,
it's still around. I see it here and there.
In all intents and purposes, it is. There's a somewhat ironic that
I think they're trying to compete with Netflix and they have their own streaming thing, but
they've tried but failed miserably.
No one uses it.
Anyway, it's sort of interesting that again it was kind of a product within. A product, movie.
Big time.
And, Danny, they try a couple of different ways of proving that it's a movie in there, including the Sylvester Stallone as the T-800 in Terminator 2.
And I like that Arnold says, it was his best performance ever. Jack Slater movie critic.
Yes.
I like the fact that he went and saw Terminator 2.
Yes, despite all of his really rough and tumble adventures, he still likes a good action movie.
But it made me imagine Jack Slater buying a movie ticket, sitting down, and then watching the entirety of Terminator 2 starring Sylvester Stallone. Like, that's just a funny image.
Yes, it is. And was he trying to smoke a cigar while he was there? Right. And in 93, I don't know, back then you might have still been able to smoke in movie theaters. I can't remember anymore.
Probably depending on the theater.
Yes. So he unsuccessfully tries to prove, and as previously referenced, where are all the ordinary, average, everyday women, which, by the way, I don't know if you noticed in that scene, not only are there no average, ordinary women, there's nothing but women. They're all attractive and in really skin-tight clothes. There's no other men in that scene.
You're right.
It is very much, again, it is a parody of an action movie where we got to have as many attractive women as possible. But they're literally, other than Danny Madigan and Jack Slater at a video store, walking outside of the video store, a woman's walking their dog. There are no men in that scene other than those two.
I never noticed that.
Yep. It's so many of these things to me are the clues. Hey, this is a parody, right? But I don't think people got it. So then we're going to proceed to Danny's going to be a detective and help Jack solve the case and go find where the bad guys are.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. The bad guys are in there.
Yes.
Okay, so the Professor Toru Tanaka answers the door. They're looking for the drug dealer of the house.
Which is a line that's one of my favorites that I've used many times. I love that part of the script.
It's really funny. But then followed up by kind of a leaden gag where he starts to leave, and Danny's like, where are you going? I'll be back. You didn't know I was going to say that, did you?
Yes.
It's like, well, why was he leaving? Like that. They only tried to cram that in there.
That was shoehorned at best.
Yeah, it's super. It's one
awkward.
of the funniest moments of the movie, followed by one of the just leaden. Like, that doesn't work at all.
No.
Benedict shows up. They have a little exchange. Nothing really, no plot really happens, right? It's just like, oh, let's have Jack meet Benedict.
Yeah, the only thing that you get is that Benedict then hears Danny say that he had a different eye. So then Benedict, who actually is a very capable and effective villain, he realizes he needs to do some more work on this Danny Madigan. So it is
Right.
an important scene. One, it has some great comedic moments between Schwarzenegger and Dance in terms of the dogs, and they're very well trained that they are.
They form a pyramid.
They form a pyramid.
That doesn't really work for me. It's
Well,
kinda
whatever.
silly.
It's silly, but again, I think it's trying to really up the parody.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few. That's one of those like red flags. Just like, hey, people, this is a comedy. Like,
Yes.
you almost need stuff like that just so people understand
What it's supposed to be.
Yeah, this is not actually an action movie.
But what it does get is that Danny, as he's leaving, gives that key piece of information, which then Benedict realizes that, well, this kid actually knows something, I don't know how. So helps to push the movie forward.
Yeah. So like you said, Benedict wants to learn more about Danny Madigan. How does he do that? Because then he shows up at Jack Slater's house in a little bit.
He does. He says that he needs to find out some more about our little friend.
But then he just shows up at Jack's house.
He somehow just shows up at Slater's house,
So
right?
he doesn't actually do that. He could have just said, I'll go to Jack's house and
maybe
kill them
he called the same phone number in New York and they had no such number, no such name, and he just decided, I'll just show up at Slater's house.
So they show up at Jack's house. We know that his ex-wife is not in the movie. And then Jack has a joke. I'm not even going to put it on the pun list, the thing about, what is my elbow wearing thin, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
it's not even a pun.
That one is not. And
does not count.
Maybe Danny's only correct line or good line is that was a stretch, because it absolutely was.
Yeah. So we meet Whitney / Meredith
/ Bridget Wilson.
Bridget Wilson, who is just a complete vacuum of a character.
Yes.
Nothing. She is...
Other than, I think, to have somebody else in Jack Slater 4, I just don't... there is no other point to the character.
Yeah, she doesn't have any plot purpose. She doesn't... It's just kind of... It's kind of there just so that Danny can lust after her. It's
yes.
Really, but then that doesn't even have any kind of...
That doesn't have a payoff either.
Yeah,
no.
There's no reason for
other than
Meredith
showing her as being much like Dad in terms of her just destroying that one henchman inside the house. Other than that, there's no point to her.
That's true. She kills one guy.
Yes. She gives him a pretty savage beating.
That's true. But even then, it's supposed to be oh, she's screaming. She's trying to pretend like she's a damsel, but she's beaten them. But even that, she doesn't
No,
doesn't really.
It's not a great character, but whatever. It kind of is what it is.
So Jack kind of gets moody and leaves. I forget why.
Ultimately, it's because he's reminded of the son.
Oh, right.
This is where we finally get the rest of the out of focus of the end of Jack Slater 3. We find out that the Ripper pulled Jack's son off the roof. He falls with a shot very close to Die Hard in terms of falling.
My notes say this is body count 19 and 20, Ripper and his son. I think we missed a few. I don't know what happened there. I'm really failing at the. I gotta find out. I need to organize my notes better because we're simultaneously going too fast and not fast enough. Yeah. So then Benedict shows up. They think it's Skeezy.
Yes,
but it's not. It's Benedict, and he shows up with a bunch of guys, including one guy who looks like Jose Canseco.
And then they establish somewhere in there that the one guy has stone hands and can't catch anything. Of course, that works out perfectly.
I do like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's over the top in terms of establishing things, but.
It's a one-scene running gag.
Yes.
It's a running gag that lasts for like a minute and a half.
Yes. So, of course, Benedict eventually escapes, but only after Jack shows up, and Jack inflicts a lot of carnage on the guys, that the various bodies that Benedict brought with him.
Whitney kills one guy, Jack kills 5, so now we're up to body count 26.
Yes.
And then we get our next pun. He's got to catch the red eye.
Yes, which is a great one.
Is it?
I think it is.
He's not going. There's no plane involved. He's just. I got to catch the guy with a red eye. I don't know. It's barely.
I like that one, but whatever.
He delivers. He sells the line.
He sells it.
So then
Danny is frantically chasing.
He's missing the best action.
Yes, that is a good point that he has. That he is in the movie and he literally would not be seeing it if he didn't catch up to Jack and Benedict.
Yeah. So then he tries to play chicken.
Well, I guess unsuccessfully. He's not killed.
He survives. So that's his best case scenario is he survives.
Yes,
but he realizes it's not going to work. And then there's an ET parody for some reason.
Yeah, they do cram some movies in here that don't make a lot of sense in terms of parody / reference. Yeah, that is among them.
Just kitchen sink it. Let's just throw everything, every parody, everything you can in there. Again, we like this movie, but there's just individual moments are just so bizarre.
Yeah,
that's one of them. It's like, why is that?
Benedict in that sequence does have one that I like. That when Jack is just firing away, the Danny could not scare him away with his game of chicken, but when they're staring down Jack and Jack is unloading his hand cannon, that turns the car around. They're not going to just keep driving, even though they could. They turn around and go back up the other way, and Benedict says, "Next time, get thicker armor like a tank." Right. Is one of my favorite Charles Dance lines in the movie.
Yeah. So Charles Dance, he escapes with the ticket.
And he leaves behind a surprise for for the investigating officers.
Vengeance is.
It's got words. And then, of course, place blows up. You cut to. I don't know if this gets added to the body count, if all those cops are dead or what.
I assume everyone survives because Jack and Danny survive.
Yes, Jack and Danny survive. They're a little worse for wear.
They left a cartoon bomb. They didn't leave a real bomb.
Yeah, they left one of the Wile E. Coyote bombs.
But before that happens, before the house blows up, I want to speculate about the word that Danny wrote on the card.
Oh.
Again, we've agreed we're not going to curse on the podcast, but how filthy, what did he, how bad is it? Is it a simple, single curse?
I think it's a single curse, and it starts with an F and ends in a K.
That's all.
That's what I think it is.
You don't think Danny's getting creative about it?
I think he's trying to be, I've never watched to see his, hand motion to see.
Well, his hands are gross. You don't want to look at them.
Okay,
it's so
fair
disgusting.
Enough. So I think it starts with an F and ends in a K. And I think because that would be the one that you, at the time, and I don't even know if today you can get a PG-13 if you drop that one.
You get one.
Oh, do you?
You're allowed one, and it has to be, it can't be in reference to a sexual act.
Okay.
That's, I think the chief may drop one later in the movie. But it's
an F-bomb?
It's in one of those rants that...
that you can't understand?
It's really hard to hear. Yeah. So then we see Benedict at his house, and I want to point out, he has a picture of Santa Claus. When he's taking things out of his pockets... The ticket's in there, obviously. It's part of the plot. I don't know, is this Benedict's house, or is this...
No, I assume that this is the Vivaldi's.
Vivaldi's house?
And so he's just got...
He's got a little room?
He's got a room. He's a hired hand. And
he's got a wing. He's got like the Zodiac stuff. We're playing clip 58.
And it looked like he has a moose, too, so it's establishing that he really is a great hunter, that he's got a taxidermy of a moose
I didn't
head.
see the moose. And a lot of like weird like Greek statues and stuff. He's taking out his eye. I want to see... He has a photograph of Santa Claus. I thought it was right away.
Yeah, he does have a bunch
Oh,
of
yeah, look at all the
rifles,
hunting
yeah.
stuff he's
So
got.
you're establishing that he really is a marksman.
Yeah, and he keeps his eyes on spoons.
Yes, that never made sense to me why the eyes are on spoons.
I don't know. It's kind of a
Interesting touch.
yeah. They do.
By the way, those 4 eyes that we are watching right now, I had the chance to buy those in an auction, and I failed to, and I'm still to this day upset that I did not purchase those.
Yeah, I forget. Did you get outbid or did you?
I failed to bid. Let's just not even go there because I really would like to have those.
Okay.
I have not seen this Santa Claus, by the way. So
There.
yes, you're right. He does. He has a picture. I don't know if it's supposed to be like him sitting on Santa's lap like 40 years ago or what.
Maybe. Yeah, it's 5906 if you want to find it. But he's got some money in his pocket. He's got some kind of a card. Looks like a library card.
Very
And-
interesting.
And then a picture of Santa Claus.
I never noticed that.
And then
the ticket, obviously. But if you're watching at that frame, that case of glass eyes, sadly, I probably could have won with a pretty low bid and did not. I'm still to this day upset about that.
That is an awesome prop. Yeah, I mean.
So right now, Benedict is discovering there's something to this ticket.
Yes, he's learning the nature of He doesn't quite go through though. That's the thing.
No.
He sticks his hand through a wall and goes like, "Oh, interesting." But you'd think he'd want to poke his head through or something. So I don't know if it's not clear if he understands really what's going on or what. But
the audience, I think this is more for the audience that the bad guy has the ticket and the ticket works for him,
Right.
not just for Danny. It does what it wants.
Exactly.
Somehow Nick knew that, even though he had never actually activated the ticket.
Yeah, so we skipped that scene, and then then the house explodes and all that happens.
Yes.
And they're back in the boss's office, and the boss is angry, and his ears are smoking.
Yes.
Which is another cartoon touch.
Cartoon really putting in your face at this point, hey, this is a comedy. This is not a pure action movie.
Right. And then we get a weird scene where Jack has an apartment off of the freeway.
Yes.
And he's the chief has taken his badge. Is that what's happened?
He has lost it, and he's not going to get it back.
And Jack is sad. They feel the need to have Jack go through this emotional arc of just oh, I'm not a cop, I can't, and it lasts for 30 seconds.
Yes.
He shoots a guy in a closet, which is another body count 27. There's always a guy in there.
There always is. I do
then
love
he's
that the
sad
guy in the
for
screen door, by the way, has he's completely covered in black. He has a rope. I don't understand it, but it's a rope that it looks like it would be to scale a building, not that it was just a length of rope to try and strangle Jack. It's very
right. It's so thick it can never strangle somebody.
Exactly. It makes no sense, but whatever.
So then Jack's upset, and Danny tries to cheer him up, and he says, "You can't die until the grosses go down," which I know is a line that you enjoy quite.
Yes, I do very much.
You're constantly quoting that line, so I had to at least mention it.
Thank you.
And then, there's a weird transition. What is it? Danny says something completely having nothing to do with anything, and Jack's just like, what? And then suddenly they're driving, and he's like, I know what's going to happen. He's going to bomb Leo the Fart's funeral. It makes no sense how they get from point A to point B.
Point A to point B, which is there's going to be an explosion.
Oh, right. He's like, there haven't been enough explosions
in this movie. Yes.
And then Jack's just like, what'd you say? And then
all of a sudden he realizes, he's going to put a bomb.
No. The explosion conversation happens in the movie. I'm here. I'll just play it. I don't want to play too many clips, but let's just...
Whatever you say.
Jack, it's a funeral for a guy named Fart. Hello?
Funeral?
Check this out.
So, yeah. How does
a funeral make him realize that...
Funeral?
Does that mean because there's people that are going to die? I mean, I don't get the transition either.
It seems like they changed Danny's line at some point or something.
Could be.
It doesn't make any sense. So they're driving... Hilariously, cars are crashing around him.
Yes,
but he's not driving crazily.
That's some of why I love it. Is that I don't know how you couldn't know what this movie's supposed to be, because yes, he's not swerving, but all the other cars are swerving and they're not exploding at least,
right.
But they're swerving and getting into accidents.
The movie's acting as if he's this wild man on the
despite
road.
the fact he's calmly driving down the freeway,
right, and just having a conversation.
Yes.
So we learn that Benedict killed Leo the Fart.
Yes.
And then there was also a
nerve gas.
Yeah, nerve gas. So he puts two and two together. Leo the Fart's going to pass gas one last time.
Which is a great line.
It is. Leo the Fart, technically a body. So 28.
Yes.
He was killed during the course of this movie, even though we don't see it happen. So yeah, this funeral scene is amazing.
Yes.
I love this funeral scene so much.
The funeral scene...
To me, this is I love the Hamlet scene also, but to me, this is my favorite scene in this movie. Is once he whoops, didn't mean for the sound to be on. Once Arnold grabs the body, everything he says makes me laugh.
It is a great sequence.
But all this practice stuff happens first. I forgot about that.
Yes, and
it shows how little it matters because this whole stuff about him turning on Jack and this scene is so unnecessary.
Yes,
like all they need to do is get up to the top, and have that scene.
If you're cutting stuff, you can cut that out, but it does get the cartoon cat back in for another cameo.
Yeah. So yeah, Jack. They go up to the funeral, and Jack goes up to pay his respects.
Where everyone up there is ensconced in black, except for Jack, who of course has his uniform, but he puts on a hat, so that's how he's able to blend in. Nobody recognizes the most famous cop in L.A.
That's his disguise?
Yes, the hat is his disguise.
I don't know, because I get the sense that hat is like a trademark Jack Slater hat. Because I think when we go to the real world, all the posters and like that giant inflatable Jack Slater we see later, I think they all have him wearing that hat. So I wonder if it's like, okay, now it's time to get serious. Jack Slater's putting on his trademark hat.
I've always just taken it as that's how little that they put into the thought of his disguise. Or that's how, the villains are so dumb that they're easily fooled by Jack Slater. All he has to do is put on a hat and they can't recognize Jack Slater.
Right. So so Slater, he pushes his way up to the front.
Yes.
And here's what happens.
He's a good man. A flatulent man.
And the guy just looks at him and walks away.
In disgust.
Wait, here he comes.
You hear this?
Help me! Get me out of here!
My God! This man's not dead!
That's so amazing.
There's a nun. I mean, some of it's fantastic, the people in the funeral.
But Arnold's performance in this is so funny. Him doing that little voice. This man is not dead! It's just everything about this scene makes me laugh. He's pushing nuns out of the way.
I'm a doctor. You a doctor?
Yes.
Check his chin.
He hits the guy with the corpse. Yes.
Doctor has fainted. Can somebody help
He's
this man
fainted.
here? I think the corpse. I mean, the patient. Look, elephant.
Look, elephant.
And then the amount of firepower.
And they all look.
Yes, they all look, and then the amount of firepower.
Oh yeah,
is just
everyone
fantastic.
has a gun. All the nuns have guns.
Nuns have guns. The
nuns, puns, and guns.
And the ladies in wheelchairs are heavily armed.
Oh really? I didn't notice
Yes,
the wheelchair.
the wheel. If you play it, if you keep playing it, even if the sound is down, there will be a woman in a wheelchair. She is very well armed.
All right, I'd keep the clip going if we had more time. But I love when he gets to the edge of and goes, "Don't shoot!" and he throws the.
Yes,
it's so funny. This scene is hilarious. Like it's to me, it's the funniest scene in the movie. So yeah, he says, "Don't shoot." The body goes. The body is filled with nerve gas.
Yes,
and then he puts it on a crane. Danny somehow knows how to drive this crane.
He's figured it out through trial and error since he's scared everybody away.
I guess. And then there's an action sequence with a helicopter.
Yes, which the elevator goes down, and you've got another Die Hard shot with Jack falling, very much like Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber falling and letting a piece of the elevator go down with him.
Yeah. Well, there's a first shot of him falling that's actually a really cool shot where he lands on the elevator.
Yes.
That's a really good shot.
It is.
And if you watch it really closely, they do a really good job. Like, it's a stuntman falling, he lands in the elevator, and then they cut, and they disguise the cut with like that glass breaking, and then Arnold slides down, and you get a close-up of Arnold. It's a really good, good stunt shot.
That is not CGI. Those are real.
Yeah, real
action
jump
sequence.
onto this elevator, and then they cut the camera, and they put Arnold up there, and he slid down the rest of the way.
Yes,
it's a great shot.
So then the helicopter eventually, Danny takes care of the helicopter, and Arnold falls.
Helicopter kills 10 guys by my count because he ducks, and there's the helicopter just shoots a bunch of henchmen.
Yep.
And then
the two guys in the helicopter.
2 guys in the helicopter. So we're up to 41 now. I forgot practice. Practice is part of that. He's in the body count. And then Jack falls, and Danny catches him. They drop the body into the La Brea tar pits.
Which does not stick to Jack.
Doesn't stick to Jack.
Which is a great joke that I love. And the fact that Whitney just shows up and has the towel and a change of clothes ready, but then that the tar does not stick to him.
That's when the movie is at its best. It's like very self-aware. It's just like, of course she did.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what needs to happen there. And then we see Benedict back at Vivaldi's place.
Yeah,
Vivaldi wants to know, he goes, how did it went? I don't know why, I never noticed that before. And he lies for a minute, and then he goes, no, it was a complete disaster, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, and added another to the body count in Vivaldi.
Yes, he kills Vivaldi. We never talked about Vivaldi's misspoken turns of phrase or whatever.
Yes,
that's the 360.
The running joke within it that Benedict is. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be making fun of it being Vivaldi's second language, or the fact that because Benedict is British, if it's sort of a play on, the British always having things, the command of the English language better than Americans.
He's not speaking the proper Queen's.
Exactly, Queen's English, if you will. I've never known which that joke is supposed to be, but either way,
it's not that funny, which is probably why we forgot about it. But it's just him always getting things like expressions wrong.
But Tony Vivaldi he is not number one, and he is no more.
That's right. And then Benedict starts talking to the camera, which is really weird. He starts going like, if that boy can use the ticket, so can I. And he
all of a sudden, it becomes a very Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he's talking to the camera and to the audience.
And it doesn't happen before or since. No other character does it. It's a really weird moment where, he understands that he's in a movie now, but he understands where the camera is. He just decides he's going to start talking to the audience. It's really
unless it's supposed to be like the arch villain who has soliloquies, right? And he's always pontificating. Other than that, if he really is supposed to be addressing the audience, it does not make any sense why that's the case.
Yeah, but I don't dislike it because Charles Dance is so great.
Yeah, I'd give him more lines all day.
And he has a line saying, "If God was a villain, he'd be me."
Yes.
Which makes no sense, but you buy it because it's Charles Dance.
Yes.
He's great. And then Jack and Danny show up in a monster truck. Oh, and
Whitney's monster truck.
I forgot that she pulled up in a monster truck.
Yes. Destroy the house. Yet some more destruction in Jack Slater 4.
Yeah. So why didn't she come along? It's her truck.
It is her truck. I don't know how does she get home. I mean,
right.
This is pre-Uber, so I guess, I'm not sure.
Maybe Jack.
Maybe she went and got Jack's car, which is still left that he left by the office building.
No, the helicopter landed on it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. That's right. He needs the truck because the helicopter landed on his car.
Yeah.
So I don't know how Whitney gets home.
Maybe Jack leaves her behind to clean up the mess, deal with the paperwork.
Yeah. Even though she's not a cop, she can deal with the paperwork.
Well, if Danny could be a cop, she could do it.
Or maybe the cartoon cat gave her a ride. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be plenty of cops there soon, so I'm sure that she'll be fine. And we never see her again.
No. So that's the end of Bridget Wilson Meredith.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. So Arnold throws Charles Dance into the real world.
Into Professor.
That's right.
Into the movie Into the Real World. So two villains make it through.
Does Professor Toru Tanaka, does his character get a name, do you know? Or it's just Butler?
It may be in the credits, but you never hear his name.
Yeah, I don't think he ever gets a name. So they chase them out into the theater, out into the real world.
Yes.
Arnold shoots at a cab that they've commandeered, and he's surprised that it doesn't explode.
Yes, he is surprised it doesn't explode. Then a little bit later, he's punching a window for an 89 Mercury Sable.
Right.
Which he's able to start, and then he realizes it really hurts because, as Danny is trying to explain it in the real world, you can't smash a car window with your bare hand without it hurting.
Yeah.
That basically things are different, and you get to the chicken sequence, which I actually kind of like in the real world. I think it works pretty well.
And this is kind of the thing I was talking about earlier, where I was not giving the real world sequences enough credit because it does. It's a really nice shot where he makes Danny get out, which he didn't do in the movie,
right?
Which maybe just because he understands that things are not the same here, but it's still, it's interesting that before
they made
he didn't
that
make
choice.
Him get out. Yeah. But unlike the last time where it's a really actiony shot, you just see the cars crashing into each other from really far away. It's just all done in one shot. And
yep,
it's done in a very realistic way.
Realistic, they crash, and you're still in the point of view from behind Danny and run. I think the camera runs and moves up quickly with Danny as Danny's going to check on. Jack.
Yeah, so I mean that's what I mean. That works well because they completely sell that it's a real crash and it's the real world. The cinematography changes, everything changes.
Yeah.
That's really well done. The Jack gets out. He's injured, but as we all know,
89 Mercury Sable had a standard driver's side airbag.
Right. What about a checkered cab?
No standard driver's side airbag.
Oh, I see.
It does not explain, however, how if the ticket worked again and Benedict got out at the last second, why is Professor Tanaka dead and Benedict isn't? But whatever.
Yeah, the ticket does what it wants.
Does what it wants. Again, it is a bad device, but Benedict is gone, and so now they're concerned. What happened to Benedict?
Right. He's got the ticket. Jack's stuck in the real world. The professor is body count number 43. And then they see a billboard it says Jack Slater or Schwarzenegger is
Arnold
Jack Slater.
Schwarzenegger is Jack Slater.
Right. and Jack needs a place to sit down. They go to Nick's projection room, which, by the way, I didn't mention earlier, is like the most lavish projection room.
It is pretty big.
I've never been a projectionist, but I imagine they're
rooms, tiny rooms.
Yeah, are not the giant. He's got like a lazy boy in there and all kinds of stuff. It's amazing. Nick learns that the ticket worked. He's not as amazed as I think he should be.
No.
He's just like, oh, really? Oh, okay. That's interesting.
No, and he starts listing off, famous actresses that it sounds like he thinks he's going to go and be able to put the moves on.
Yeah, I like that. He's just like all like these classic 30s starlets. He's just going to I'm going to get lucky in these movies.
Yeah, and it's like, Nick, you realize that you're still yourself. You're a broken down old man. It doesn't change who you are, but he hasn't put that much together. But then Danny lets him know that, Benedict came through as well. And
and he says, oh, the henchman with the glass eye, which I like that he was watching the movie.
Yes.
At some point. He fell asleep at some point.
Yes, and didn't realize that Danny was in the movie. He must have only seen like the first 5 minutes of the movie, apparently.
Do you think that's how it works? Do you think like the movie kept going in the theater?
I think so, that it kept going and Danny was in it.
Right.
Yeah, and Nick must have fallen asleep at the right time to not notice that Danny was up in the movie.
Pretty early in the movie, and then the dynamite didn't wake him up.
Nope, none of that. That woke him up.
He's a very heavy sleeper.
Yes.
So Danny takes Jack home. By the way, now again different marquees on the movie theaters.
Oh,
outside.
I did not realize that.
It says Head Crusher, and then Bloodthirst and Hot Blood.
Interesting.
So in the 2 hours that the movie's been running, they've changed the movies yet again on the neighboring theaters. And then we see Benedict walking around the real world. He's appalled by a prostitute.
Yes. I actually, and this is some other stuff. One, I think Charles Dance is great in, and I think it's some more stuff that works in terms of kind of the contrast. But making, for a movie, I do think it's pretty believable. I think maybe it's a little bit over the top, but it makes, kind of street violence and being not, it's not arch criminals, right? I mean, it's kind of basic things in the quote unquote real world. Sometimes people commit crimes over.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of works. But for this like arch villain, right, in the world he's coming from, that's kind of shocking. But at the same time, he realizes it's a huge opportunity. Yeah. That if these like street level guys who are killing people over shoes can succeed, man alive, what can this arch criminal kind of brought to the real world? What could he really do?
It's like weirdly not enough though. Like, that could have been what this movie was about, is fiction versus reality.
Yep.
But it abandons it pretty quickly.
You're right. It's going back to what you've said. It doesn't know what it wants to be.
It's a good scene, though.
Yes, but sure. I do think it is a good scene, which it has one of his lines that you and I love, which is, I just shot somebody and I did it on purpose. Which, from Charles Dance, it's just even better.
He's playing this part so perfectly.
Yes.
I've just murdered a man and I want to confess. Shut up down there.
Yes, just a random guy like 3 floors up that doesn't want to hear about anything. It's great.
So the guy who gets killed for his shoes is body in 44, and then Benedict's experiment is 45.
Yes.
So then Danny wakes up the next morning, and Arnold and his mom are chatting.
And Jack, not Arnold, but whatever.
Right,
Jack has
right.
been. They've been.
We need to start making that distinction.
Yes, spending the entire night talking and listening to music,
think
Mozart music, no less.
Do you think they only talked? He says later that we just talked and never talked to a woman before.
I think
she's acting. The way she's behaving.
She's interested, but no, I think it was just talking. They've been listening to a lot of Mozart music.
No, she had a line. Hold on, let me find a line. Oh, Danny says, "Mom, you turned him into a wimp," and she goes, "Oh, I think not." And I think something may have happened while Danny was asleep.
Maybe. If so, then her parenting skills they're very suspect.
Just he's in the next room. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to find the clip, but it's her saying that. I'm just like, I think something.
You think there was something going on?
She's acting. I think at the very least, Mercedes Rule as an actress thinks that happened. She's playing the scene as if this has happened. I think so. So then they go up to the top of the Empire State Building or something, or the Chrysler Building. I don't know what. For no reason. He's just like, I've never been any place real before. It's like, okay, why this place?
Yes. So they choose that, and then Danny is trying to implore why they need to find Benedict.
Yes. Then we see Benedict with a mystery person, and Benedict gives the 4th pun in this movie. He actually apologizes for the pun. He says, until Jack Slater is, forgive the pun, taken out of the picture. Pun number 4.
Well played.
And I forgive him for that pun. He asks us to forgive him, and I forgive him.
Yes.
And we find out it's the Ripper he's talking to. And
who's been pulled from Jack Slater 3.
Yeah,
which I've always been confused. How did Benedict find a running? But I guess maybe he went to a Blockbuster and maybe it works that way.
Well,
but
Danny was watching it in the theater.
I guess you're right.
Not
yeah,
one day ago.
I guess Nick was running it, so maybe somebody else is running it leading up to Jack Slater 4.
Right.
Fair enough.
Yes, I like the fact that he's like, his real name, believe it or not, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he shows him a newspaper of it's like all the movie ads, and he's crossed off Arnold's name. Like,
yes.
I'll take you out. He's just like really like angrily crossed out his name. So they're gonna kill Arnold at the movie premiere. The Jack Slater 4
yeah,
movie
right.
premiere.
That now becomes the device of how they can solve their problem and get rid of Jack Slater.
Yeah,
which is interesting though, because if Benedict really is that smart, then he should be very wary of what happens to Charles Dance, right?
Well, that's the weird thing, is nobody else gets to be real. I guess Tom Noonan also appears as himself.
Right.
But nobody else, like, where's Charles? And nobody else is at that premiere.
The premiere, right.
Charles
It's
Dance
Maria Shriver. You're right.
Isn't
and
there, apparently.
Anthony Quinn, none of those. That's interesting and doesn't really make sense. But for it to work in terms of Benedict's plan, those guys couldn't be there because Benedict could be in danger.
Yeah, but that's what they should have done. It would have been more interesting. It would have been one of those things it wouldn't even occur to you. And then if Jack Slater found Charles Dance,
right,
and like, I'll turn the tables or whatever, like, it could have been a cool thing to do. I wonder why they didn't do it. Actually, Charles Dance, Benedict and Charles Dance, neither one of them is at that premiere. So I wonder if just Charles Dance wasn't available for the shooting. Excuse me.
Something. Yeah, I mean, it winds up only being a Ripper Noonan, Schwarzenegger Slater scene.
Yeah.
So some of it, I think, is because they want to replay the Danny on the roof, just like Slater's son. That's why I think they just wrote Benedict out of that scene entirely for that purpose.
Well, he ends up on the roof, but I'm saying at the premiere.
Yes. Okay.
Benedict's not there.
Fair
Benedict
enough.
is there, and plot-wise, he's there.
Yeah.
But Charles Dance is not in the whole scene where they're running around at the premiere. But anyway, before we need to briefly talk about how they learn about Benedict's plan. Is they see him coming out of the restaurant or whatever. They chase down the cab. He's gone. Arnold pulls out the guy and says, "Who's the guy in the back of the cab?" Or no, first he says, all the movies that says "Make my day," blah blah blah.
Yes.
I've got one for you. Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
Which is a great one.
And he goes, you didn't know I was going to say that. So I guess that's why that I'll be back moment was there earlier, but it's
a labor joke at best.
It's labor, but it's still funny to see Arnold saying
yes.
Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
But in the back of the cab, he's got
the
paper, which is highlighting different villains, if you will, from movies that he could go to build his dream team.
And they figure out his plan. So, cut to the premiere. There's an amazing 4-story inflatable Jack Slater.
Yes.
I want to put that out back. Like, I want that outside of my home at all times. I wonder where that is, if that still exists. It's just rubber, probably deteriorated, but oh my god,
it would be amazing. It would be great to have.
It's this it's like it fills Times Square. That building with all the advertising.
Yes.
In Times Square. It's the size of it. It's enormous. It's amazing. I hope that was at the real premiere too.
I think that's some of what I got to of the business side of it, kind of ruining things. Is it was so much hype for a movie, and that went into it.
Yeah. So Arnold arrives in his Hummer. Him and Maria Shriver. Does some interviews. Little Richard is there.
Another cameo that makes no sense, but okay.
The cameos in this are amazing because later, is it Jack or I forget? Somebody runs into both Chevy Chase and Damon Wayans.
Yes.
Chevy Chase and Damon Wayans are just walking to the premiere, and I think Jack just bowls them over.
Yes.
And Damon Wayans is wearing was it Blank Man?
I think it was Blank Man. Yes.
I don't think that movie had even come out yet. It's like I'm sure Damon Wayans is like, I'll be in the movie, but I've got to wear a Blank Man hat to promote Blank Man.
I've got to promote this movie.
Oh, but it's like such a short shot. So yeah, pun number 5. Ripper shows up to the premiere as well. They all assume it's Tom Noonan as the Ripper, and some entertainment reporter goes, "Oh, it's the Ripper. Let's ask him a question."
Oh yes,
that is a pun. Jim Belushi is not a fan of Arnold. We learned.
Yes, another cameo. So many of the basically every cameo makes almost no sense, and is not an actor I wish to see on screen.
Yeah, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme would never miss the premiere for a second.
Of course not.
So we get to learn what all these celebrities think of Jack Slater.
Yes.
So then Jack and Danny show up to stop Ripper, and Arnold asks the concession girl where his seats are, and one of these girls, I'm going to find this clip. As short as we are on time, one of the girls, she doesn't have a line, but I think her reaction is the funniest thing. Like, obviously, they all think it's Arnold.
You also, by the way, need to add to the body count because as where we're at, Tom Noonan's agent, sadly,
yes.
I'm assuming doesn't make it. You don't know it, but
You're right.
there's a big cut in his coat. I'm guessing he didn't make it.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I have it here. It's number 46. I just missed it. I'm trying to. There's
Chevy Chase.
Chase getting bowled over. It's so funny. So he goes to the concession. Here's Ripper. Yeah, here's Ripper about to kill
His
Tom
agent.
Noonan's agent. I shouldn't have gone back. Yeah, Arnold bowls over Chevy Chase. Damon Wayans.
You're
Damon
a
Wayans
big
is not
action
happy.
guy. I mean, what do you think about this?
I will never miss the premiere for Saga.
Here we go. Watch the girl in the middle.
Where? Where am I sitting?
There, right there.
There's 2 balconies.
Huh? What? Huh? Hey, what? Hey, what? What's going on?
Yeah, the one in the middle. It's almost like she's trying to make herself.
What is that? What is she doing?
I don't know what she's doing, but it's like she's moving to say, "Hey, Mom, Dad, look, I'm in this scene."
Well, probably John McTiernan went like, look amazed, like, oh my God, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then she just went, she's just looking around at nothing in particular.
Yeah, it's bad.
So weird. Okay, so then, yeah, Hammer accosts Jack about the Jack Slater 5 soundtrack. There's a encounter with the Ripper in the theater. Arnold tackles Jack as Jack pulls out his gun. This stuff, I don't know. It's perfunctory.
Yep, it gets you to where you need to go. It does have a theme that's very, since we're doing the Schwarzenegger movies, a theme that comes up a lot, which is Arnold on screen multiple times with himself. And you got, this time it's Jack Slater.
Does it happen a lot?
Oh, sure it does. You've got a few where it's Arnold and Arnold.
There's this and there's The Sixth Day. What else? How many movies has he done where there's...
Well, you now have Terminator Genesis where he's done it. You've got, do you think this is the real Quaid? You've got 2 versions of Arnold in Total Recall.
That's true.
There's a lot of multiple Arnolds, if you will.
That's just a thing that happened a lot in like 90s action movies.
It may have been, but what I'm saying...
Van Damme played like doubles and twins and clones like a million times.
I'm just saying that it's another example and incident, so you've got that in there.
So anyway, we got a confrontation on the roof to mirror the beginning, the one from earlier.
From Jack Slater 3.
Yeah,
Yep.
And the Ripper dies from electrocution, even though he's got all rubber clothing on.
Yes. I never understood that, but...
And then Ripper says, I'll be back.
Yes.
Huh?
None of that sequence. This lends it to the real world stuff. This is the portion of it that doesn't make a lot of sense. But Danny's off the roof and hanging, and eventually is saved.
Yeah, well, I think Benedict shows up after this, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, so he's hanging off the roof. Jack saves him, and then Benedict shows up.
Yes.
And Charles Dance is... This is a great performance. The part where he's just... I guess I'll tell you the entire plot. And
he does tell the entire plot. Since he's in a tuxedo, I'm assuming actually he was at the premiere. You just don't see him.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe that was the plan, and then they had to change something, or who knows. I'm gonna skip. There's a moment where Danny saves Jack's life, where he just leaves one chamber empty and shoots him. Let's just watch it.
Gene, did you make a movie mistake?
A movie mistake?
You forgot to reload the damn gun.
No, Jack. I just left one chamber empty.
Yeah, look at Charles Dance. And he did. I mean, shoots Jack. The reason why I wanted to play this clip, he hits Danny. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Danny starts crying about his arm. But wait. Benedict turns around. He's going to finish off Jack. Watch the way Danny attacks Benedict here.
See, Jack.
This is a good line, too.
Bad guys can win.
But the movie doesn't really follow up on that in any way. That's the problem with it. Watch this. Right here, this shot. It's like a cross kick that would make...
I actually did not know. I always thought he had picked up something, but I never knew what. But you're right.
It's like a flying.
It is.
Cross...
It's like Van Damme taught Danny how to.
Well, it's like it would make Rey Mysterio proud. It's like the most.
Yeah, I've never noticed that. Thank you for pointing it out. That makes no sense.
I only noticed it this time. But it's just like, what did he do? It's kind of off camera. You can't really tell what's happening. But He's
because I'm sure
definitely
the actor couldn't do whatever needed to be done.
He's doing some kind of flying kick, and then he hits Benedict in the head with his feet.
Yes.
What is he doing? I mean, maybe he jumped off of something? I don't know. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre, but he does save the day.
Yeah, so anyway, Benedict starts choking Arnold and then gets hit back. It's not clear what happens. This fight is it's not clear what's happening at all.
It's not clear, and it's unfortunate that the way Benedict... It's not a great action sequence, and for such I think not only just a great actor, a great character. I think Benedict is a really good bad guy.
Yeah.
And it's just not a great ending for him.
Yeah,
but again, it goes to the ticket, right? The ticket is everything, and he's effectively destroyed with the ticket.
It's too bad he can't come back because no sequel for you.
There is no. It is a good line for Arnold. I do like no sequel for you.
It's pretty good.
But at the same time, I'm somewhat heartbroken because I really like Benedict. I want more of Benedict.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Because in terms of his leaving one chamber empty, that's a smart. I know he does the typical villain thing of explaining the whole plot, but he's doing it for a reason. He's making himself seem like that villain that he then has fired off all his shots and he has none left. But he's done it intentionally because he's setting Jack up.
It's true. He's deliberately playing into the trope.
Yes.
Then Jack thinks he's so accustomed to these sorts of things happening. Jack reacts.
He lures Jack out from being hidden where he can get a clean shot because Benedict is smart enough that in the real world he's not this marksman, right? That can't ever miss. He's probably realized that in the real world it's actually really hard to shoot people.
That's true.
So he's now drawn Jack out and has Schwarzenegger's a big guy. He's got a big target now. So to me, Benedict is a great villain, and it is in many ways. It's too bad that. Again, if anybody's listening, I'd like the Jack Slater movies. I want some more Benedict because I think Benedict was a great villain.
But he ends up being done in by a flying cross kick from a child and then a ticket not working when he wants it to.
He did not go out the way that I would like that villain to have gone out.
Yeah, it's disappointing. He's just like, ha-ha, I've got the ticket. And then it's like, oh, no, it's not working right now.
Yes.
It's not an interesting way for me.
But a bullet to it somehow makes it explode and destroy Benedict.
Well, it's his eye, right?
Oh, yeah, I forgot that, yes, because
he has exploding eyeballs.
He has exploding eyeballs. I forgot that was his backup plan. They do at least establish that, because earlier when I had watched it, it didn't make any sense to me. Why did Benedict explode? Now it did make sense. He does somewhere in there that I have a surprise if the police try and apprehend him. So they do establish it in the movie. There is a line that Benedict has that establishes that is an exploding eye.
I missed that line, but I think
it's in there.
The thing that establishes it is when he's at Jack's house and then he runs away and his eye falls out. I remember like it's skeezy. He's like, his eye was missing.
It was,
and then the cop finds it. And
yes, but no. In somewhere in here, Benedict does say that maybe it's when he's explaining to the Ripper. Either they do establish that he has a surprise for the police if it doesn't work out on the roof. So
okay, I didn't pick up on that.
So then, cut to essentially now the villain. All the villains are gone, but Jack Slater is bleeding to death.
Yeah, and then the ticket falls next to one of the nearby theaters where the Seventh Seal is playing. This stuff, Ian McKellen, it's nice seeing him in this movie as Death.
What doesn't make any sense to me, I like the idea of other movie characters coming out, but what doesn't make any sense to me is Benedict doesn't, in my watching, Benedict doesn't have his ability to be a sharpshooter. Jack is not indestructible where nothing hurts, but Death still has his power.
Yeah, Death.
Why does Death have his power?
Yeah.
I like the joke, I guess, if you will, that he walks by but why does Death have his power? That has never made sense to me. And again, as you said, I like Ian McKellen. I like that's who they picked, and they got Ian McKellen to do it. And keep in mind, for maybe younger people that are listening to this, Ian McKellen wasn't a household name when this movie was made. I mean, he is now, but Ian McKellen was not a household name. From his career has completely changed in the last 10 years. Nobody knew who Ian McKellen was when this movie came out.
I think the first time I had noticed him was, what was that movie where he played the Nazi, like the old Nazi?
Apt Pupil.
Apt Pupil, yeah. That was like after this.
Yeah,
that was like 95 or 96 or something.
Yeah, about that. And that was a Bryan Singer movie, actually. The only reason I saw it is because I do like Bryan Singer.
Yeah, and that was after Usual
And
Suspect.
I think that's some of the reason why Bryan Singer actually wanted Ian McKellen for X-Men was his work with him on Apt Pupil. But anyway.
Right.
So Death comes, and he's the one who tells Danny that, what Danny needs to do to save Jack Slater. All of it just... I've never felt that it works all that well, other than the fact I do like Ian McKellen, so I like that he's in this movie.
Yeah, I forgot my body count. I actually think I got lazy in my notes and I stopped counting there too. So 45 and 46 are Ripper and Benedict.
Yes.
And then Death is walking down the street and he just passes
Gets a cop, and that poor cop.
A cop eating a hot dog.
Yes.
It's like, you're dead.
Yeah,
just
it was his time, apparently.
Just for fun.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. He shouldn't be able to kill people. I never thought about that.
There are many things in this movie that don't make sense. This is just on the list of it.
Well,
it's not necessarily that it makes it a bad movie. I just don't understand why those others lose their power and Death has it, other than just to show that, Death taps a guy. You don't even need that.
I don't. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a weird way to end this movie. This movie just kind of peters out, which is kind of a shame.
Yes, it has a weak ending. Both Benedict's ending as a villain is weak, and the overall movie ending is weak, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, also it bothers me that Death shows up just to kind of solve the last problem of the movie.
Yes,
because the whole thing is just like, we don't have the ticket. I forget what it exploded. I don't even know. Oh no, it fell down.
It fell down. They lost it.
They lost it. Yeah, right, because that's how Death showed up. So they don't have the ticket, and Death's just like, hey, the ticket's in the ticket booth, dummies.
Yes,
like,
you idiots. The other half.
That's not satisfying just to have Death show up and solve it's the last problem in the movie for them to solve, and then Death just kind of gives them the solution.
Right. Why is it Death? Why couldn't it be Nick? I mean,
right.
For all intents and purposes, Nick really hasn't had much in this movie, but he was necessary. Give him something. Throw the guy a bone. He's not going to go get to meet Garbo and try and put the moves on her. So
now he can.
I guess they have the other half, but let Nick solve the problem, right? Hey, I was just thinking about it. I was just about to go see Garbo.
He's too busy just sitting up in the projection
doing nothing.
He's got to run the movie. Remember, he's got to start the movie so we
can
get
get it moving.
But then so they get the other half of the ticket, and Death just wanders away. I do like that the Death just showed up because he was curious about Jack.
Yeah,
he wasn't on any of my lists. Ian McKellen's good. He's good in this, but there's I don't know.
You didn't need to have it. It was like they just wanted to show. Yes, other than the Slater movies, other characters from movies could come out. That is why it felt like it to me. And I do like their choice in terms of if you were going to do that. I don't think you needed to, but if you were, I think the Seventh Seal and Death was a real interesting kind of choice to make.
Yeah, and choosing a real movie, it's interesting.
So I mean, it's an interesting choice, but I don't think it's necessary for them to do it because you've already off-screen established Benedict went and got the Ripper, so I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah, there's no real reason for Death to show up.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so then they find the ticket, and this time it's working. I guess that half of the ticket works way better.
Yeah, and works maybe when you want it to instead of when it wants it to. I don't know.
Yeah, so they get Jack back in the movie where it's his gunshot.
Just a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. And I like the doctor just like the way he reacts. It's like, are you kidding me?
I can't believe you called me down here for this.
Right. And then Jack and Danny have a tearful goodbye.
Yes.
Which I don't know.
It doesn't feel like Jack Slater, and it doesn't feel like Last Action Hero. It's trying to be too many things.
Yeah.
And some of the things when it's trying to be too many, I like that it went in those directions. This one, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's unearned. You don't feel like they have this
emotional connection,
emotional relationship. Yeah, for sure.
It's been a buddy comedy like the whole time, right? You know.
Yeah, you wouldn't end a Lethal Weapon movie like this, where
no, it wouldn't be like a tearful, embrace with Riggs and Murtaugh. It doesn't make any sense. Or even the Die Hard, right? I mean, you do have a little bit of a hug, but it's more of like an excited, survival. It's not heartfelt drama. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And then Jack goes to the captain and smashes his window and then tells him he doesn't want to be violent anymore.
Yeah.
Make up your mind, Jack.
Yes.
And that's basically the end. We never see Danny's mother again. Like, we don't get any kind of wrap up about his life. The movie, again, like I said, the movie theater is still going on. Is
slated for demolition.
So it's so weird. And then there's a shot of Jack driving away, and that's the end.
Yes. So I agree. The petering out is the best way. It does not. The movie starts out outrageously fantastic.
Yeah.
Ends not well at all. Some really great stuff in the middle. And I think that for me, like the closing thoughts is what it comes down to is that this is a movie that failed box office wise, does not fail as a product or as a movie. And that as time has gone by, what I noticed rewatching it, this movie holds up really well. And that I can't say that for a lot of movies, particularly action movies, don't hold up really well. I mean, we pointed out some of the things that have gone by the wayside. Blockbuster, Polaroid, although Polaroid has made a comeback. projectionists, if you will.
It's of its time in a lot of ways.
It's of its time in a lot of ways, but in terms of like, I don't feel like, I'm watching even though it was trying to parody 80s and 90s action movies, I still enjoy it today. And I think that of trying to push people to watch it, that's the reason I do, it's still a great parody of action movies, even though action movies have changed a little bit. In a lot of ways, it's a lot more CGI. It's a multicultural team of people that are assembled. It's not, the one guy to save the world.
Yeah.
But it still holds up really well, and it's still an enjoyable movie.
Well, it's what you were saying in the previous episode that I agree 100%. It's this movie, the kind of ironic take on a subject matter, regardless of what it is. In this case, it's action movies. But now we live in the age of irony. Everything is irony. Everything.
Yep.
I mean, even like the most serious things. I mean, whatever. You watch Breaking Bad, you get some scenes that are self-aware or whatever. Now living in the age of irony, you watch back and look at this and go, yeah, this feels like a movie the kind of movie that would be made today.
Yes. And that's the reason why I think for episode 0 we said it was ahead of its time.
Yeah,
it's not that it was such a great and well thought out reflective script. I mean, that's not what this kind of movie is, but it was ahead of its time because now you're right, age of irony. If this were made today, it would just be kind of, I don't know, it would be par for the course. Nobody would say, what is this movie trying to be? It would be, oh yeah, I know what this is.
Yeah, the whole idea of like, it's a movie in a movie and there's different layers of reality and it's,
it would not be lost today, but today's audience at all. This was just a movie that was made. People weren't either, I won't say they weren't ready for it, but it's not what they were expecting, and so people rejected it. But now, to me, that's the reason I push it to so many people is that it's an undiscussed. I don't think it should be a 10 out of 10 on IMDb, but its rating is like a 6.8. It's better than a 6.8.
Yeah. And, some movies are greater than the sum of its parts. I don't think this movie is, but the individual parts are great.
Yes.
So many scenes, whether it's Hamlet, whether it's the funeral, whether it's,
anything with Benedict.
I definitely came away from this viewing with a higher opinion. I've always loved it, but I was a little down in it last episode. So I regret that because this movie's, it holds up. You're right.
Yeah, and what it reminded me going back and watching again and now kind of going through this episode here is that Benedict and Charles Dance, without them, it's sort of like what I've said of Game of Thrones is that Tywin Lannister and getting him right was important. I think talking about this and talking through, that's a really great villain and really great casting, and that's why I think it holds up, is that you can't just have the hero, you really need to have a villain that is believable or interesting,
yeah.
And Benedict really is. And I've said on multiple times, I want the Slater movies. I'll tell you what, maybe in really thinking it, what I've learned in this viewing and discussion, I might really want more of Benedict. And I'm kind of disappointed that I don't have that opportunity.
You just want to see more Charles Dance and things.
That's probably what it is. So let me put that asterisk. If Charles Dance is not willing to reprise his role as Benedict, I'm not nearly as interested. Unless maybe Alan Rickman might be interested. Maybe it would be interesting in some ways with Alan Rickman. I don't know.
Imagine Alan Rickman as Tywin Lannister, though.
No, that's not working. So you're right. I want Charles Dance.
I don't think that would work.
You're right.
So that's Last Action Hero.
It is Last Action Hero, and we have a system for.
You want to get into that? Okay. So as far as our next episode, what it's going to be, what we decided is instead of doing it kind of randomly, which is what I was pushing for last episode, but for a lot of reasons that isn't a great idea. We broke it down. We broke down all of Arnold's movies. There are 32 movies we're going to cover over the course of this podcast. We broke them down into 8 categories of 4, and then we're basically going to be doing this podcast in 8 episode blocks, and we're going to choose one movie from each category. So, should we run through all the movies real fast, or should
I don't think we need it. I mean, we don't have to do it necessarily now, but in terms of what this one was, this was from big budget kind of action.
Yeah, we're running super long. Otherwise, we'd probably get into more detail. But more or less, yeah. So this is from the big budget movies category. And it was this. It was what? It was this, Predator, Total Recall, and True Lies.
Yes.
So we've taken care of that category for this block. So we're not going to do any of those movies anytime soon. But it's just a way to kind of mix it up and
to cover the comedies, and then we did a block for the Terminator movies, so that we weren't doing all the Terminator movies in a row to try and break it up, and also give us a different perspective and a different type of movie to be looking at.
So yeah, we need to pick the next movie. I think since I was the one pushing to do Last Action Hero first, I think you feel free. We may as well just go back and forth and pick. Is that fair enough? Like,
yeah,
let's go back and forth. So it'll be your pick this time. So you can't take Predator. You can't pick Total Recall. You can't pick True Lies. But basically everything else is on the table right now.
This one ran really long, and the next one may as well, because I'm going to pick one that I thoroughly enjoy as well. I'm gonna suggest, and I don't remember the category we named it. We're gonna do The Running Man.
Oh, right, because that's low budget.
That's low budget. That's low
a
budget
different
action.
category. I was like, wait a minute, we can't. Okay, you're right.
I was thinking maybe comedy, but no, I'm gonna do low budget action. Let's do The Running Man.
Yeah, that's gonna go. We're gonna be exhausted. We got to figure out how to keep this time down.
Yeah, well,
we didn't get to a 10th of my notes. Let me tell you. Also, I lost track of my body. It was 48 or no? Wait,
I thought it was 49.
I'm really slacking. Whatever.
Go back and post that.
We'll update next episode with the previous because it's too. I'm exhausted. This has gone on forever.
Okay.
So that's the show. Tune in next time. We don't have a website yet. We're recording this in September. It probably won't go up for a couple of months because we're going to record a bunch and then put them up
in a block.
That way we have a cushion and all that. So we have a website. We haven't built it yet, but you can go to bpamg.com. And something will be there at some point, I'm sure. And you can, if you want to send an email, you can at questions@bpamg.com. We'll probably do an email episode or something. I don't know. It depends on whether people are actually listening or not.
That's true.
If we get like 2 emails, we're like, we're not going to do an email episode. No one's writing in. But we'll see. But if you want to write us in, it's questions@bpamg.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Pitter.
Yeah. That's the new social
I've invented.
media.
Yeah, it's exactly. We need to register that right away.
Yes.
Pitter.com. It sounds like a thing it sounds like
it will be a thing if it's not a thing.
Yeah, we're almost 3 hours. I'm exhausted. Twitter. What's our Twitter? We just registered it. Bad Puns Podcast.
Yes.
At Bad Puns Podcast.
Yes.
So check us out there. Anything else? Any closing thoughts?
No closing thoughts. We'll see you at the next episode.
We've said so much. We have nothing else to say. So yeah, tune in next time. We'll see you then.
Thanks.